Yeah, 1 2 1 2.
Hey yo, AC.
1 2 1 2. Mic check. Hey, can y'all hear me out there? Hey. Against all odds. 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 Against all odds.
All right. Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Rise and Grind Morning Show. It's Wednesday, April 2nd. So no more of the April Fool's Day jokes, I guess. I tried one yesterday. Didn't really work. But anyway, good morning. Hope you're all having a wonderful Wednesday. We've got a big name coming into Detroit this morning, Shemar Stewart out of Texas A&M Aggies. We spoke with Nicky Scorton just the other day about Nick Scorton, and I've learned a lot about both of these athletes. So we're gonna start today's day off with Shemar Stewart and have a conversation about him, what it means, the top 30 visits. The Lions have not had a ton just yet. They're going to ramp up over the next couple of weeks. So we're going to talk about it. Let me get Eric in here this morning. Welcome into Rise and Grind Morning Show. Good morning. Eric, good morning, man. What's happening?
Hey, good morning, everybody. It's a wonderful, beautiful day out in northern Michigan, and I'm loving it. And I am fantastic today, just like every day. And pinch me because I can't believe it. It's like I'm dreaming every day.
There you go. That's good. That's a good positive attitude to have, right? Positivity breeds success.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you haven't seen on the store this morning, I don't know if it popped up on the YouTube channel yet for the store, but the quote that Brad Holmes used, risk, right? That is from a book that I read. I assume that's where he got it. Carl Richards is now a t-shirt. So you can get it. Risk is what's left over after you've thought of everything is now available in the store. Now, I thought it was a perfect quote by Brad yesterday to kind of examine what happened last year, right? You think you've thought of everything. And as Rod Wood confirmed yesterday, 17 players on IR. So I had the number a little bit in between 14, 16, and then 20, 30 guys throughout the year. But 17 at that stage of the Commanders game on IR, which is insane. So risk, yeah, it's what's left over after you think that you have thought of everything. I think it's a perfect example of what happened last season. And these guys have to weigh risk each and every day. And of course, I'm going to make it kind of segue into the Cancer Foundation and how, you have to evaluate your risks, right? Whatever you're battling in life with health, myself and Megan and others that have battling cancer, you have a lot of risks that you have to weigh. This medication, that medication, do I do chemo? Do I not do chemo? Do I do radiation? Do I not do it? And there's a lot of risks involved. So just know that no matter what you think of, what you go through each and every day, that there's always something else out there that you haven't thought of. And that's okay. Things are going to happen. You just got to do your best to get through it. So yesterday we all had a chance to watch Rod Wood and Dan Campbell kind of give their open, their open look at what's coming for this season. And there's kind of a commonality between Brad, Rod, and Dan. They didn't want to talk. They just wanted to answer questions. Whereas before, when you watch these every year, there was a little bit of a monologue in the beginning. They were talking about things. They're kind of discussing what's coming up for the season and laying it all out there. This year, they just wanted to get right to it. You ask the questions, we're going to give you our best answer. So I like that. I think that now they're down to business. And there's no more proving who the Detroit Lions are, right? They are who they are. And they're starting to pay for the success. And Dan Campbell laid it out perfectly in a couple of quotes yesterday that, now you're paying the toll, right? You're paying the toll of success. And that's okay too. So anyway, let's kick it off this morning. Eric, before we get into Shemar Stewart, anything off and running today for you?
Not really. Just that last night, you just reminded me of something I did yesterday. You were talking about Rod Wood said we had 17 guys on IR in that Washington Commanders game. Well, you really have to put one more on that number. You really need to add Amik Robertson because 2 plays into that game, he broke his arm. And it just, that was it, that's just like having an 18th guy on IR. So I would consider it 18, not 17. So I finally broke down and I watched the first 5 minutes of that game. I watched the first two drives. We just came out flat. We didn't do anything on offense in the beginning of that game, and our defense just let them run all over the place. And once Amik Robertson was out, that was basically it for us. So it was very disappointing to look at and watch. And the reason I did look at that was because my buddy Doug Julian that went to the game with me, he took some pictures of you and I and a bunch of pictures of me at the game and of the game itself. And I posted a bunch of those pictures yesterday. So I thought, hey, it's been long enough. I'll finally take a look at that game because I've never watched it since watching it live. And so I brought myself to watch about 5 minutes of it, and that's all I could handle. I had to shut the TV off. That's how much of a heartbreak that game is to me still. The 49er game, I watched it right afterward, and I watched it about 50 times. This one, it's a little harder to swallow for me, this divisional game, because we should have won that damn game.
Mr. Matthew Agrastrand, I have no idea what you're talking about. Sound like we're at a funeral. Okay. All right. Well, hey.
Yeah, nobody. No, we're all positive vibes and going today. Yeah.
Not sure who he is. I'm not sure if he's in here. Trace can be the judge of that. I'm not sure if this person's in here daily or weekly or what, but
I don't know.
I don't know. Am I supposed to just get up and start dancing, put a top hat and a cane on and go for it? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do?
We're going to talk about Shemar Stewart. That's what we're going to do.
That's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about one of the most elite edge rushers who's about to impact the Detroit Lions. So Shamar Stewart came in last night, and all signs point to top 30 visits mean something in Detroit. So before we even get to Shamar Stewart, now I was having a conversation briefly last night with Mr. Nicky Scorton. I'm not going to highlight everything that I spoke about with him, but I didn't ask for his permission, so I won't. But I was trying to gauge where the visits are landing for the Lions. So I will share more when I actually ask for permission to share. And I feel like, there's some good, like you get a good sense of what the Lions are going to do every draft when it's based on the top 30 visits. So some teams, they bring guys in for the top 30 because they have more questions, right? Maybe they have more questions than answers. On the other side of that fence, I feel like you bring guys in because maybe you really like the individual. You have a lot of the questions answered, but maybe there's just a few more things you want to figure out, and you want to make sure that's the guy. And so I started thinking last night, and like I do every year, I go back and look at the visit tracker, and then I kind of weigh it against, did the Lions draft him or not? Well, the Lions brought in Giovanni Manu, drafted him. They brought in Terry and Arnold, drafted him. Ennis Rakestraw, drafted him. Sione Vaki, drafted him. And all of those football players were drafted in the first 3 rounds, right? Or first 4 rounds. When was Sione Vaki? He was 3rd round, right? And Giovanni Manu was 3rd round, I believe, too. Is that correct? Do you remember, Eric, or not?
Well, we had 2 6th rounders because we had Giovanni, or not Giovanni, but Mahogany and someone else was in the 6th round. I thought it was Vaki.
Yeah, I would know. It wasn't Vaki. Vaki was at least a 3rd or 4th. So it was Ennis in the 2nd. Giovanni and Vaki were in the 4th. There we go. Both in the 4th. We didn't have a 3rd last year. That's right. We moved up, I believe, or did something. Yeah, we moved up. We sent our 3rd to Dallas, I think, is what we did. So it was Gio and Vaki both in the 4th.
That's what it was.
Mekhi Wingo and Christian Mahogany. So I'm looking through this.
Yeah.
And I don't see where we brought either of them in, at least for a top 30. Now, combine visit, local day visit, stuff like that, I don't see them on that list either. I know some of them wouldn't fit, obviously, for a local. Those are typically, there's a region that you can get local visits in that don't penalize you. And then combine, I don't have that in front of me right now for 24. So I guess the point that I'm trying to make is over half of the football players that the Lions drafted last year came in on a top 30. Does that mean that Brad Holmes doesn't have a change in heart this year, that maybe I'm not going to tip my hand as much this season, especially if you value the top 30 visits and you're trying to figure out what a team is doing. You can go back and look at Brad's record. Every single year, the top 30 visits, the majority of the draft picks have come from that list. Doesn't mean that he wouldn't have drafted more if they were available. I mean, obviously, some of these players are not available. They get drafted, and you just don't get a chance to pick them. So with Shamar Stewart, I believe that the one question that just about everyone is going to have, which I can answer, is the production. Why the production fall off, or why not, enough production? 4.5 sacks, I believe, is what he had last year. And the answer came from Nicky Scorton about this defense for the Texas A&M Aggies. It was more about containment, right? And not getting after the quarterback. When they could get after the quarterback, they would. But the other thing that I learned about, this defense right away, and something that I believe Shemar Stewart made light of at the combine, teams were not going to pat the ball against the Aggies. The quarterbacks weren't going to sit back there and just pat the ball and wait. They were instructed to get that ball out fast because Aggies had one of the best defensive lines in the league, in the entire NCAA, to be honest with you. Why would they sit back there and let that ball not get out, in under 3 seconds? Of course they did. That makes it really difficult for a defensive line to get home. We've talked about this over and over and over. The reason why I put more weight into the quick pressure, which is under 2.5 seconds, is because in the NFL, even your least mobile guys like Jared Goff, he's getting the ball out as quick or quicker than anybody else. And so if he can get the ball out in 2.6, 2.7 seconds, even 2.49 in one game last year, why can't other quarterbacks do that? They can. But by and far, the edge rushers are not getting to the quarterback in 2.5 seconds. The average sack in the league is over 3 seconds. You've got to let that sink in for a moment. Maybe you start to realize, edge is a very important position. It is. But I think the more important position is the interior defensive tackle, and then obviously the back end of your defense being able to contain as well as stay sticky to these receivers, because if they can stay sticky for 3 to 3.5 seconds, that's where the majority of your sacks are going to come. Maybe that's why Brad hasn't gone out and heavily invested into another edge rusher over the last one. It's money, right? I think we know that now. It's money. It's also wanting to re-sign your own players. But I think most importantly, it's he realizes, I would guess that he realizes, you're just not going to be able to get home all the time. You might affect them with pressure, but you're not going to be able to get home all the time because these quarterbacks are going to get the ball out. It's something to think about. And I think that the tape, continually tells us the truth, which is the ball getting out before these guys even get a shot? And that's typically the answer. So Shamar Stewart, I have not finished, I have not released the rest of my top 15. It's going to come out in phases this week. I did 11 through 15 yesterday, I believe. So I'll be doing 6 through 10 today. And I guess we'll find out. Is Shamar Stewart in 6 through 10, or is he in 1 through 5? We'll find out. At least you'll find out today. But I'll say this. Shamar Stewart, athletic freak. He's drawing comparisons to Myles Garrett. I also, very early in this process, back in February, said that Shamar Stewart, in my opinion, is a comp to Myles Garrett athletically, body size-wise. He's extremely long. He's gifted. He completely blew out the combine from a testing perspective. 9.99 RAS score, which is the third highest RAS score for a defensive end or edge rusher out of the last, 268 prospects that have played in the NFL. So there's something to that. And we know that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes love smart individuals, but it also is their testing component. The RAS is not so much about their intelligence, right? It's about how they test it and their body size. So despite limited production last year at Texas A&M, which I think I just answered, that defense was not set up to do that, right? It was not set up for these guys just to go get after the quarterback and get sacks. So despite the limited production, I think that his physical tools and his potential, his raw potential, he's still a bit raw, make him a very high risk but very high reward prospect for any team that takes him. I think the teams will need to be patient with his development. I think that year 2 and 3 are going to be way better than year 1. but that doesn't mean that he can't come in as a rookie and have some success. I think his early, depending on where he goes, but if he were to end up a Detroit Lion, I would say that his early projection is probably six sacks his first season. That's what I would put. It's not like he's going to come in and just be a wrecking ball, and he could surprise the heck out of us. But I just feel like sometimes people throw out these wild numbers, 10, 12, 15 sacks. It's not typical, right? It doesn't happen very often. Stewart, in my opinion, is carved from granite. I mean, this guy is just chiseled. He possesses a rare blend of traits, explosiveness, untapped upside. He's long. He's very sudden off the snap, but he really hasn't learned to weaponize his hands to control the point of attack and bypass protection with his go-to move. So I think that he still needs, and all pass rushers do, but I think he still needs to learn how to develop more pass rushing moves. He's got a crazy bull rush. He compresses the pocket off the edge right away, which is primarily what you'd seen him do at Texas A&M. He's more of the Marcus Davenport style of edge rusher, if we're going to make comparisons here to the Lions, versus the Aiden style. But his speed, his get off, I mean, his ability doesn't mean that he can't be similar to Aiden. I just, watching the game tape, I see someone that's more of a pocket, pocket crusher, if you will, the can crusher style of defensive end, but he has elite quickness. So he can be very disruptive on both phases, speed end, big end. The lack of production, again, I think it's not relative to his traits. It's not relative to his explosiveness. It's not relative to his size. I think it's more relative to the Texas A&M Aggies and their defensive style. Is this a boom or bust label? No. And anyone that's saying that, I just don't understand. You're getting this vibe of he's all in or he's all out. I don't see that. Someone told me, I'm not going to say his name, but very close to this individual, Shemar Stewart, said that from the neck up, he's just missing one thing. And when that light switch finally turns on, he's going to be amazing. So I think it's all about development and training for him. I think that when he gets to the next level and he gets surrounded by these elite athletes and these trainers and these coaches that are able to develop him and draw everything out of him, I think that that's where you're going to see Shemar Stewart in year 2, year 3 just take off. And I did not comp him to Myles Garrett for any other reason than I think that he can get there at some point. I could be way off the mark here, but I think that between him and the other Texas A&M, Nick Scorton, I think that both of these guys are going to be long-term staples in the NFL. I think they're going to be two of the best edge rushers in the NFL in short order. Any team that is lucky to land either one of these guys is going to be reaping a lot of benefit from it. So that's the short take on Shamar Stewart. That's the short take. We're going to give you what Tim Twentyman said, but before we do that, what did Eric say?
Well, there's a few things. Shamar Stewart has a relative athletic score, RAS score, of 9.99 out of 10, which ranks somehow third all time out of a possible 1,802 defensive ends ever measured in the past 40 years. So in the past 40 years, this guy comes in as the number 3 tested athlete at the edge position. So I'm wondering who the other 2 were ahead of him. I'm guessing one was probably Myles Garrett and maybe Aaron Donald. That was all I could think of. So if this guy has a body that's built like that, we just got to get the stuff, like you said, up in his head. We just got to get him knowing the right system. And don't you think coming into a system like Detroit, where you already have an established number 1 edge in Aiden Hutchinson, you have a great line, and you have 4 guys that are working together on a championship caliber team that's ready to go to a Super Bowl. They're ready to hit the playoffs. They're ready to win the NFC North for the 3rd time in a row. Don't you think he would be a perfect fit right here in Detroit? I do. And listen, college stats, sometimes they're great, sometimes they're bad. I don't look so much at the stats, but at the tape of the person and then what they've done in college. So was he stuck on a team where he had to be more of a team player? And that's what he talked about in an interview. And I'll read a little bit of, I'm going to read some of his quote. And this is what he said, um, during his time at Texas, he secured 65 tackles, 4 passes defended, and 4.5 sacks. But that wasn't the big thing. Here's his quote. I wasn't a sack chasing warrior. I just wanted to become the best player for my team. And sometimes the stats don't show that. Sometimes I had to play dead to rights. And sometimes I just couldn't finish or couldn't get there in time. But also, teams were not going to sit there and pat the ball against us. We had a stacked D-line. Everybody knew better than to just sit there and pat the ball against us. And he came from nothing. He said, I've never been the person to not be humble. I've been humbled a lot of times. So I remain humble no matter where I get in life. Now, doesn't that sound like a Brad and Dan Campbell kind of guy? That sounds like grit to me. That sounds like no excuses for production. I was just doing my job. And go watch my tape. You'll see I did my job the right way. I would rather have a player that listens and does the job and has containment rather than some guy that got a few more sacks, but every time the running back goes around the left side, whoa, see you for 65 yards. I would rather have somebody that can contain, and that was the big thing with Davenport last year. When Davenport was in for those 3 games, you didn't see anyone running around his end because he was there with those big long arms to snag them and keep contain on people like the quarterback for the Cardinals, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray was not running all over the Lions that day until Davenport got hurt. So I would rather have an end that can contain and do an awesome job containing rather than some guy that gets 10, 12 sacks every year. I would rather have a guy that can do his job at the other end, opposite Aiden. Let Aiden get all the sacks. I don't care. Or let him get all the sacks and Aiden get none. As long as they are doing their jobs together and working as a team, I think we'll have a defensive line unlike you've ever seen in Detroit. All they got to do is do their jobs.
I would agree with all of that. I feel like, again, I speak to the Hive defense quite often. It's something that I preached and teached many years ago. It's getting everybody to work together. And you hear Dan Campbell talk about it all the time, the unselfish player, that they want guys on this team that aren't worried about individual stats. They're worried about the team. And the team comes above all else, right? It comes first. It's before anything else. It's the team. And I think that started very early with Dan and Brad and the way that this team was put together, even in 2021. They didn't care if you're making the most money. If you're not the best football player, you're not going to start. They didn't care if you were drafted ahead of somebody else. If you're not the best football player that day, you're not going to start. And that still is the same way that Dan coaches the team today. So don't think for 1 minute that if they bring in a guy like a Nick Scorton or a Shemar Stewart or Jared Ivey, if they're playing better than Marcus Davenport, they're going to start. And since you brought up Marcus Davenport, let me pivot for just 1 second. Yesterday, we learned something. I expected Josh Paschal to be the starting right defensive end right now. I wouldn't think of it any other way when you look at this lineup, the depth chart that we have. Dan, or was it Brad? One of the two. I think it was Brad. Nope, it was Dan. Confirmed yesterday. Paschal. No, I'm sorry, it was Brad. He confirmed that Paschal's going to be able to be utilized a little bit more in the interior. Yet last year he had to play more on the outside. So we're probably not going to see Paschal drop weight and play defensive end. Marcus Davenport is your starter today. Right now, I know that's going to upset a lot of people that aren't real favorable of Marcus Davenport, but I don't think the sky is falling here. Exactly what Rod Wood said, Brad, Dan, all of them, that the fact that we're getting this entire team back for the most part, and we won 15 games. You heard everybody say that yesterday, the last couple of days. You won 15 games with 17 guys on IR. Now getting all those guys back and healthy, which is the same thing Eric and I have been saying for more than 2 months now, that if we could just get these guys back and healthy, much different result. And we're going to have that opportunity. So now my draft board this is why I didn't put out my mock. I'm kind of waiting now. I'm going to put out 2 more. I'm going to put out a final like the week of, and then I'm going to put out 1 more before that. So it's changing now, because if Pascal is going to be inside, which means it's probably Levi and Pascal taking over for a Lee McNeil, DJ and Lopez switching off there at nose tackle, this means we have an open spot for end. 2 open spots now, really. 2 open spots. We had spot for a rookie, and then we had a spot for 1 more guy, which I put Pascal in there as the starter and Davenport behind him. Pat O'Connor can float. So there's going to be heavy competition this summer. And I think that there's going to be some really good guys cut. And I think that the same thing's going to happen that happened last year. These guys aren't going to go to another team. They're going to get through the waiver period if they have to. And then they're going to end up back on the Lions practice squad. So this team is going to be extremely deep. Let's get into what his scores were. And then I'm going to tell you what I have on my sheet for Mr. Shemar Stewart and where I see him. Okay, so this is your NFL Combine or NFL Network, whatever. It's the prospect analysis. 6'5", which he's like 6'4" 3/4. Let me see, what do I have on my sheet? He is 77 inches, so I guess he is right at 6'5". They must have rounded up, but 6'5", 267 pounds, 34 1/8 inch arms, 9 5/8 inch hands. So Eric just mentioned a minute ago with Davenport and those long arms, being able to catch the guys on the outside when you set the edge and you're still engaged and you're able to get one arm, off and corral, running back. You just hook them a little bit, slow them down a little bit. Like, that play is more important on the end than you would think. Just being able to slow them down, just a hesitation, will allow your linebacker to make a play, your DB to make a play. And that's why I always preach long arms. I'll beat it to death, because it's guys like Marcus Davenport, guys like Shemar Stewart, guys like Michael Williams, guys like Donovan Ezeraku that have these long arms that will be able to affect this game more often than not, just because of that. So 64 on the production score. His production wasn't great at college, but you know what? It was exactly what they needed. That defensive line contributed together. Athleticism score, I think this is low. Like, when you look at what he was able to do, I mean, come on, a 4.59, a 10-yard split at 1.58, a vertical of 40 inches, in a broad of 10 foot 11. I mean, you're talking 131 inch broad. That's insane to me. Now, we don't have the rest of these numbers, and I've looked at the pro day numbers and I didn't see him there either. So it's not going to help me, identify what he, exactly is. But what I did is I threw, and thankfully I don't use those numbers in my evaluation. The only one that I use is bench. So let me change this to my measurements. I apologize, it's not exactly easy to read here, but this is Shamar Stewart right there. Now, the blue number at 22 for bench, I just threw in the average. That's the average. So that way I could actually fill out the rest of this sheet. Here's what I want to point out. This number right here, 1.10. That is an elite score for the APE index. That means that not only is he really long in the wingspan, but he also has really long arms. And his wingspan is way bigger, way longer than his height. So 84 3/4 inches, and he's 77 inches tall. That's huge. So he has an elite wingspan, or an elite APE score, which, in my opinion, this is something that is not talked about enough, at least by any analyst that I've ever listened to. And this is something that I've been paying attention to for years. Because if you do have shorter arms, you need to have a better APE index so that you can get long, right? That long stab or whatever that you're doing on the end to be able to keep these bigger tackles off of you. So the purple are elite scores. So he's elite in the APE index, elite in the vert, elite in the broad. Well, these two numbers here tell me not only does he have quick pop off the line, but he also has good, short area burst and quickness. His lateral agility is going to be really good. His 10-yard split, solid. And I pay attention more to this number than I do the 40. The 40 is great, but it's this number, the 3 cone, and how you're kind of moving around those cones, the bend in the hoop drill. And he did all of those things great. I highlighted a video the other day with it. So, in my opinion, when you look at where his numbers are, over to the right here, he's a 40. And I apologize, it's hard to see. This maxes out at a 50, right? So it's really hard to get above a 40. He's got the highest grade of all edge rushers right now in this draft. He has the highest grade. Now I'm going to finish this list today, get it all caught up with the rest of the pro days, but I haven't seen anyone else come close to a 40. The only other ones is Landon Jackson, James Pierce, Donovan Ezeraku, and Sean Martin. Believe it or not, Sean Martin, I mean, nobody knows who Sean Martin is, right?
I've never heard that name.
Right. And I have him possibly going in the second round for an unknown guy because his measurables and everything else are so elite. And I did watch some tape on it, and I love it. But we'll see. That's all going to change, when we get into the final days of doing the mocks. But so what did Mr. Tim Twentyman say? And then we'll jump into the chat. Eric, of course, if you see anything, go ahead and just let me know. But
yeah,
right now, Tim Twentyman said this. Shamar Stewart, position edge, Texas A&M, 6'5", 267, 4'5", 40. He did not do the bench. That's why I can't find it. 40 inches, vert, 10 foot, 11 in the broad. 3 cone did not do it. 20 yard did not do it. So I know that I'm not failing to find information. Nobody can find it. He didn't do it. And that's why I've asked, I'm glad that I've got this nice little connection with Mr. Scorton because he's able to give me some information that I wouldn't otherwise have. I just can't share it all, right? So how does he fit? This is what Tim Twentyman said. Stewart is kind of long. He's not kind of, he is long. Athletic defensive end. The Lions like along the edge of their defense. He's got a terrific length, and his athletic traits really jumped out at the combine, specifically the explosion that he showed with the 40-inch vertical. His sack production wasn't what teams typically like to see from a first-round edge player, 4.5 sacks in 3 seasons. But watch the tape, and you'll see how he affects the passer a ton. Now, I'm reading this for the first time this morning. This came out at 7 o'clock. Yeah, 7 o'clock this morning. So I haven't read this yet. Similar minds, right? Similar minds. He sets a good edge in the run game, which is a prerequisite to get on the field in Dan Campbell's defense. Hello? I mean, yes, right? That's why Marcus Davenport is there. Overall, his body type, athletic traits, and upside would fit the Lions as a rotational. What is that noise? We keep getting some weird noise coming through. You didn't hear it? Yeah.
No.
We got a crazy storm going on, so I don't know what's going on, honestly.
Oh.
His sack production wasn't what teams. No, let me skip over that. We just went over that. Overall, his body type, athletic traits, and upside would fit the Lions as a rotational and depth piece up front with the opportunity to turn into a quality starter on the edge. He also has some experience bumping inside, which the Lions value with their defensive linemen. Key observations. Stewart's 88.2 run defense grade in 24 ranked 5th among all edge defenders. That is also a prerequisite to be a Detroit Lion, is you have to be great against the run at every position. They do not want to let teams run on them. They want to make teams more one-dimensional. Only Marshall's Mike Green posted a higher mark at 90.2 among projected first-rounders anyway. Stewart logged just 106 true pass sets last season, ranking 74th in the draft class, which could explain some of his lack of production. That's also another great evaluation here by Tim Twentyman to see their observation, what they had to say about him, quote, Stewart explodes out of his stance and is capable of creating immediate knockback or winning high side with upfield burst and flexibility. He is the type of prospect who will test the traits over production slogan to which many teams subscribe to, as he has never had more than 1.5 sacks in any of his 3 seasons. Quote, however, his tape shows a far more disruptive player than his numbers suggest. He led the Aggies in pressures, 39 in 2024, end quote by Dane Brugler. So all of this, what it points to me, and there's a lot more in this. I'll go ahead and post this in the chat so you guys can read it later. And obviously, big shout out to Tim Twentyman for putting in the work today. Obviously, we love to highlight people that do great work, and he obviously does excellent work. I think what all of this points to is you cannot let stats sell you on everything. You guys know I'm a stat junkie, right? I'm an analytical junkie. That's what I do. But I think that I've been very transparent in that you've got the tape, right? You have the stats, the analytics, the metrics, all that stuff, the KPIs. And then you also have your eye test above and beyond the tape, right? You got to see what these guys do. That's why I go to the combine. And that's why, to me, it's important. Next year, I'll go to pro days. I just don't have the time to do it this year. That's the plan. So I can get there and see these guys up close and personal, get some interviews, and get to understand and know these guys a little bit better. Every year we are graduating on this channel and getting a little bit more opportunity than the year before. I mean, being able to speak with, what is a potential first round draft pick's father, that's huge. I haven't seen anybody else do any interviews like that. And to be able to learn not only about that player, but 2 or 3 other players on that team is invaluable information that helps us understand who these guys are. And I think that what Tim said here is perfect. Like, you can't settle on the stats. You have to watch the tape and see how disruptive he was. The one stat that he pointed out, that he wasn't in on all of the passing plays, does mean that he didn't have an opportunity to rush the passer all the time. He was in on more rundowns. And it's not a problem, right? That just means that his game is more well-defined against the run. I will also say, on this defense for the Detroit Lions, do we need another sack champion? Really? Do we need another sack champion right now? If they all go to Aiden, who cares? Like Eric said, it doesn't matter. I want to see him get spread out. I'd rather see everybody getting 6 sacks a year and Aiden maybe gets a dozen or 10. That's a successful season. Last year, I think the Lions had 37 or 39 sacks through the regular season. They finished middle of the pack. And the team that won the Super Bowl also finished at the middle of the pack with 41. So sacks don't win championships. They don't. It helps you at certain times in a football game. But if you can shut down the run, if you can get long and keep guys bottled in, that's going to mean more day in and day out in a game than getting a sack on a meaningless down potential, right? Or getting 3 or 4 sacks in a game against a terrible offensive line. That stuff doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is what you do day in and day out to help your defense win as a whole. Remember, this is a team game. It's not one person. It's a team game. All 11 of those guys have to perform. And so if a guy like, again, Nick or Shamar can step in and perform as a team, as a unit, and uplift, right, the rest of the guys around him, they're winning. So I'm super excited to see what comes out of these meetings. Obviously, we won't learn a ton unless, one of the insiders or beat writers is able to get, some sort of some questions asked and answered today or tomorrow. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But overall, Eric, what's your overall thought here on Shamar Stewart?
Well, before I get to that, Full State Farms had a really good comment here, and maybe you can answer this question. He said that Bill Polian always said with edge guys, you had to be under 1.60 in the 10-yard split. Did we have a 10-yard split for Shamar Stewart? I know he ran the 40.
158.
158. So there you go.
So let me expand upon that real quick.
Sure. Yep.
I'm gonna go look at my measurement sheet, because what I have in here is the elite measurements and what I compiled. So this is my metric system that I've been building now for a couple of seasons. Those of you that have been watching the channel, you know this already. So when I have a rarefied opportunity for an edge rusher, that means that their split is 1.57 or better. That means like they are the elite of the elite of the elite. Now, to just be elite in the NFL, the average for edge rushers is somewhere in that 1.64 range. This year, so far with the numbers that I've compiled, it's 1.64. That's the average for the guys that ran the 40 and had the 10-yard split. When I go to the best defensive ends ever, right? The best defensive ends ever to do it. This is your number, 1.63. That's the average. So that means you've got guys that are up in the 159s, 158s, 157s. You've got guys at 164, 165, 167. For instance, 158. Who does that compare against? Well, TJ Watt, 159. Daniil Hunter, 157. Jared Verse, 159. Let's see. Montez Sweat, 158. Brian Burns, 158. Josh Hines Allen, 159. Max Crosby, 159. Jelon Phillips, 159. Where's
old Aiden?
Myles Garrett, 163.
Ah.
Aiden Hutchinson, 161.
And where would Mr. Hendrickson be?
Hendrickson, 162.
Yeah. So there you go.
So my elite, the most rare guys that have ever done it, 157 and better. So not many guys are going to get that score from me. So that would be a purple score. I get a lot of guys, on the sheets that, the sheet that I do, guys that I like Jared Verse last year, I said was going to be the number 1 overall edge rusher out of the draft. And I also said that, what was the other guy? The other guy that didn't play a whole lot. It'll come to me later. There's a reason why, and it's evaluating things like this that kind of help me put guys into boxes, but overall the tape matters more than anything. But this at least helps you identify, okay, how do they compare against this list of 30 guys that I compiled that are the best to do it, right? Or at least the best now and some of the best to do it over the last 10, 15 years. Obviously, the evolution of the game means these numbers get quicker, guys get stronger, guys get faster. So every couple of seasons, I got to drop a couple of years out because that's not the same style of player as we have now. It's good to go back and look. J.J. Watt, 171, right? How did J.J. Watt win with a slow 10-yard split? Long arms, extreme physicality. Dude is an absolute monster, just strong, right? Able to do whatever he wanted with one arm, which allowed him to do whatever else he needed to do with the other arm. His APE score is a 1.08. His arms are 34 inches. So when you have a deficiency somewhere, speed, well, now you have to make up for it somewhere else. So just because someone may be a little bit shorter, on the height index, well, now they have to have something crazy good to help balance that out or level it up a little bit. That's how I look at all of these prospects. I think any good analyst would look at it that way. So Shamar Stewart, man, where does he fit? I mean, he's in the elite air of all of these guys. Daniil Hunter's the only one that had a faster 10-yard split at 157. So there you go.
Yep. So I need to do a little bit of highlighting here. We've had 3 super chats. The first one was from Brandy Coffee for $2. She said, "Go One Pride. Please like, share, and subscribe." And then the next one was Michael Garrity, and his was $2 also, and said, "Rocked On is the best Lions podcast." And then right after that, Trace with another $2 super chat. "What are Shamar's weaknesses?"
Okay. It's a good question. But first, let me make sure we get these super chats shouted out the proper way. We'll start with one of these who we're hoping this guy comes back.
There's the shotgun snap. Jones back. Jones looking. Jones gonna get hit. Gonna go down. Sack. Zadarius Smith. Welcome to Detroit, my man.
I told you, 79% chance he's coming back.
I don't know where you pull 79 from, but it was kind of funny because Kaminsky retires. He was 79, and then you pull that out of your ass yesterday.
Maybe that's where I got it.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I got a couple more to do here. Let's do this one.
Intercepted. Kirby Joseph coming back to the 40. Kirby to the 45. Kirby to the 50. Kirby into San Francisco territory and taken down at the 42-yard line.
And then we'll finish it off with...
On 3rd and 14, Jones has got it, setting up a screen, and it's blown up. Oh, my goodness. Amik Robertson just sent ETN back to Jacksonville. What a hit.
So you'll see some of this, obviously, in my article when it comes out, when I highlight the next batch, or that could be the next batch after that, of my top edge rushers for this draft. But if you look at some of the tape, one of the things that I noticed about Shemar Stewart is sometimes he's a little bit overly aggressive. And I don't know if that's the production side of things where, he's just wanting to get a sack. He wants to get those numbers up, even though, as he said, He wasn't a sack chasing warrior. He was trying to play, like within the scheme for his team. But, we all have that hunger, that drive inside of us when we're doing something to compete against, somebody else. We want to be the best that we can. So I think that maybe that takes over at times and he's a little too aggressive, which can lead to a penalty or it can lead to a poor decision. I would say that that is at the very bottom end of a weakness for him. Like that is something that, technique, obviously a little bit of development from the defensive line coach, it's going to fix that. He's got to be able to just stay in his lane a little bit more, which I didn't see a ton of, to be honest with you. All these guys are coming into the league with some issues. All of these guys are going to have some deficiencies somewhere. If I were to highlight and that's really all I seen. I didn't see a ton. I mean, everyone has weaknesses, but I don't see a ton. If we highlight what the NFL Network said, puzzling lack of career production, I don't think it's puzzling. I think that we just explained why it's not puzzling. You're playing within a scheme. So how are you going to knock the dude for playing within a scheme? Nobody else on that team had a bunch more sacks. Nick Scorton, I believe, had the most with 5 or 6. I don't remember now. How about this one? Allows blockers into his frame, diminishing his length. Okay, this did show up a little bit. There were times where maybe he didn't get his hands out quick enough. He didn't start with a first fast punch. And yes, if you let these longer tackles get inside you, you're going to have some difficulty on unlocking. But again, this is a technique thing. This is a defensive line coach saying, hey, man, before you have to anticipate, before you get locked up with these guys, man, you got to get long, you got to punch these guys. Also, it depends on what you're doing on the play, right? If you're there to set the edge, more often than not, you're going to engage with the tackle, right? You're there to push that tackle into the lane. You're going to keep that tackle up on the edge and force him to where you want him to go, which forces the running back or the quarterback to go in the opposite direction or to a direction you're trying to funnel into your defense, right? So if you are locked up at times, what is that play telling you? Well, was this a pass play? Was this a run play? Was he trying to get after the quarterback or was he supposed to contain? So allowing blockers to get in, inside your frame at times, I think you can look at it from a couple of different perspectives. The play really tells you if that was a bad play for Shemar Stewart or not. How about gets pushed off his base and widened at the edge? I didn't see it a ton. I think that Shamar really anchors well. I think that he's not top heavy by any means. Again, this is a technique thing. It's just refining your anchor steps and making sure that he can stay firm into what he wants to do, right? And make sure that he's controlling at the attack. Leans into blocks instead of commanding the point of attack through force. I'll let that one slide. I would say that this happens at times. And again, just go watch some of the tape. This one, I think, is just like the other one, allowing blockers to get into your frame. If you're not coming up with, a strong point of attack and you're leaning as opposed to, coming up and punching someone in the mouth, you can get controlled versus being the one controlling. Rushes the passer with intensity, but there can be a lack of plan and focus. I don't know how someone has a plan or focus. That's really subjective, right? How do you know if someone has a plan or focus? Are you in their head? I just don't understand that statement. I really don't. Or his hand usage in both phases is well behind schedule. I would agree that he does need some sharpened hand skills, but I would say that about everybody. I would say that about every edge in this class. Maybe there's one that I wouldn't, but or two actually. But everyone needs hand training. Everyone needs combat training. I think all these guys need to do MMA or boxing or something to learn how to hand fight better. And then this last one, in desperate need of some go-to moves to kickstart his rush. This I agree with. His pass rush moves are not as well defined as some of the other edge rushers. But again, I'm gonna say that coaching is a big part of that. So just like a quarterback, right? If they don't have the best quarterback coach, they're not going to be, as ready for the next step in their career. I think a lot of these football players that are getting heckled for these weaknesses, I'm going to put a large portion of that on coaching. in development of the football player, which I feel like at the lower level or the NC2A level, I almost feel like there's been a little bit less coaching and it's more we have to win. What do we have to do to win instead of coaching and developing these players? And lastly, I know we're on the edge of, the whole COVID years, right? There was a lot of football players that came out between 20, 21, 22 that just didn't have a ton of training. All right. They missed a lot of in-person time. And I think that can affect, you at the next level for the first year or two. You've got to get that training that you didn't get. I don't know if that really affected Shamar at all. It'd be a good question to ask where his development and training was between 21, 22, really 21. 22 is pretty much done. So those are the weaknesses. What else?
Well, we had a couple of super chats. One from Mike P for $1.99, and then one from Michael Garrity for $5. And he says, smash the like button. We're way behind this morning. We only have 34 likes and 128 people watching. So if you guys want the ads off, get to smashing that like button.
I did dial ads way back for you guys today. We put it at the lowest level possible so that we could just have a conversation about Shamar Stewart. We do like to see 75 likes. But with the super chats too, when we get to our goal, we will turn off ads for the next day. Like I said before, all the money that we try to raise here goes to good causes, and turning off ads costs about $6,000 a year. I know it sounds like a lot of money, but you're talking 5 morning shows, right? 10 plus hours a week, 52 weeks a year of building ad money. So it's a lot of work that goes into this, and that's not what we're here for, right? I'm not here for the money. I do this out of the pure love of being a Lions loyal, ticket member for more than 27 years now, 60 plus years in my family. I'm here because I wanted to be here. And this is kind of my wake up moment. When the cancer hit, I was like, what have I not done? What do I need to do? Because there's something that I need to do in my life. And if it were to end tomorrow, I got to at least say I tried. And that was to get into media and hopefully someday get in the room with the Lions coaching staff, whoever that is at the time. And I am this close. The most recent NFL media credential stuff is huge to get me in the room. Jay Cruisin, big shout out to you, man. $5 super chats. Let me get you guys warmed up here with some.
Are those ice
stuff.
cubes you put in there?
Yeah, he's saying we're cold. We're cold as ice.
Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
Which reminds me, I've got to reach out to him today. I think we got lost in the shuffle. We were going to have Right or Wrong on. But I hope I didn't forget something. I better get on that today. So Right or Wrong, the guy that you just heard who announced the Amon-Ra St. Brown draft pick, will be on evening show. Have a conversation with him. Talk about what it took for him to do that, how he was able to do that, what it meant to him. Obviously his fandom and everything else. He has a channel as well. So we're going to have him on at some point. We'll get ads turned off for the rest of the day. You guys are doing a great job. I appreciate all the super chats. We'll get it turned off here. So Shamar Stewart, let me wrap up my piece here on Shamar Stewart. It is a blessing of riches in this draft. I don't care who the Lions get to some degree in the first or second round, because I know that there is just this amazing wealth of really good football players. Now, when you look at measurements, obviously I'm keyed in on 5 guys that I think are going to be high impact players year one. Landon Jackson's one of them. Shemar Stewart's at the top. Nick Scorton's at the top. I mean, honestly, I have more questions on Abdul Carter than I do answers. I know that's crazy. That's just me. I have more questions. Yesterday, I listened to a podcast briefly, and he was kind of saying the same thing. Like, this is the draft of the buts. And it makes sense. Like, Abdul Carter, number 1 edge rusher in this draft, but he's got a foot injury, but he's got all these other things going on. Same thing can be said for, a lot of the guys in this draft. He said the same thing about Shemar Stewart. Hey, elite measurables and agility scores, but production was off. Again, if you just go by the odd buts and you don't dig in, then that kind of doesn't help your situation, right? I think you have to dig in. And so answering those questions is what I'm going to try to do over the next few weeks. I think that whoever the Lions land, round 1 or 2, I think that the opportunity for them to take an edge rusher now in their first pick, definitely by their second pick, wherever that is probably 99.9% a possibility now. I will also not rule out an offensive lineman, but I think that one of those two is going to be first pick or second pick, without a doubt. Whoever it is, the Lions are going to be fine. Of course, I would love to see Shemar Stewart. I would love to see 2 guys. Both of them from the Aggies, honestly. I'd love to see them both. So, Shemar, look, no matter where he goes, he's going to be great. And I think that it's a perfect fit in Detroit for anybody from Texas A&M. I think that all of those guys fit very well. Learning about them and who they are off the field, to me, was the most important thing that I learned about them. I could watch the tape all day. But see, we don't have the benefit, Eric, of, these guys have background checks and they're interviewing teammates, they're interviewing, teachers, they're interviewing coaches. Hundreds of people get contacted about one individual in the draft, and you've got this background report on this player that we don't have. We don't have that information. So when you can make a connection with a parent of an athlete that's about to be drafted, and you get to learn about a lot of different guys, man, that really woke me up to who these guys are. So I hope one of them becomes a Detroit Lion. That's all I can say. It's hard to have a favorite because I like them both. I really do. What do you have to say?
Yeah, and being all the way at 28, it's going to be hard to predict what happens in front of us, because just look at last year's draft. What was it? 13 offensive players went before a single defensive player went. And it was just the craziest draft ever last year. There's never been one like that in the history of the NFL. And it could be just the opposite this year. Maybe it goes, everyone takes edges and defensive players ahead of us. Maybe every single team takes a defensive guy, and there's only a few quarterbacks that go, and it gets to us, and all the guys we really wanted are gone. It could happen. We might have to move up. You never know, where it's going to be quite the roller coaster on day 1 of the draft this year.
Who's Johnny Walker? I see some questions in here about Johnny Walker. And that makes me think back to the receiver from last year. You talking about Jalan? Or Jalen Walker? Or you talking about the Missouri Tigers defensive end?
Not sure.
Because I haven't done anything on Johnny Walker, if that's who you're talking. If you're talking about the defensive end out of Missouri, I haven't looked at him at all.
Love him in the 6th or 7th round would be great.
I'll dig into him. How about I dig into him today, and we'll talk about him on Friday when I can actually prepare something. Give me a little bit of time. We'll talk about it. Okay, let's get into some more news. I know we started off with Shamar Stewart because I think that's the biggest thing. The meetings today with the Detroit Lions. He came in last night, so the meetings today, and hopefully we'll get to hear some things. Probably not. A lot of this stuff I think is going to be close to the vest. We are going to listen to Dan Campbell this morning. It's going to be a little bit of movie day today too. But let's dive into Rod Wood, if you don't mind, Eric. What do you have pulled up? All right, let me pull up Rod Wood here, and then we'll kind of bounce it back and forth between what you prepared and the article that I just sent out this morning. And don't let me forget about ACL tears and obviously Ali McNeil. I'm doing a little bit of a deep dive on the recent ACL tears in the league, how long it took them to come back. But like I've been saying for the past 6-8 weeks, Ali McNeil was not going to start this season. And that was confirmed yesterday. So don't let me forget to do that. I do want to highlight that either tonight or tomorrow, talking about some of the recent ACL tears for defensive tackles. Grady Jarrett comes to mind. How long did it take him? What were his stats in the first year? What can we expect from Ali McNeil? I consider this a throwaway year for Lee McNeil. I'm sure Dan Campbell doesn't, but they want him back and healthy more than anything else. And he has to be back to feeling like the player that he was, not, just a portion of himself. So I'm really not expecting a ton out of Aleem until probably midway through the season. And hopefully he continues to get better and feel stronger the last quarter of the season, last third of the season. And then he's really humming into the playoffs. So I'm not expecting a ton stat-wise. I'm expecting more disruption-wise. So how are the Lions going to manage that? Maybe more of a rotation early. And I think that's exactly why you're seeing the Lions stack the way that they are right now. And I'm not out the Lions grabbing a defensive tackle in the first round. They just might. But Rod Wood, let me get my thing open here. All right, here we go. Okay, so available on Detroit Football Journal. It is free right now. Obviously, there's a couple of members that have paid. Appreciate you guys. I'm going to start putting things out for the paid members first, and then I will make it available for everybody else after, until I get to a point that we're able to actually get multiple writers and I'm able to produce content daily. I feel like it's important to make sure that the members and the subscribers get first crack at it, right? So Rod Wood had a little bit to say yesterday. Now, number one, he started talking about the international market expansion. Wood highlighted the Lions' efforts to expand their fan base internationally, particularly in Green Bay, Germany, and Brazil. Eric, you would love that. The team's connection to Germany has been strengthened by the popularity of obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown, who has hosted camps there, and he has a camp there every year. And the Lions have been sending a media crew with him. They said that they're going to do the same thing this year. The Lions have also organized some watch parties for fans in Germany, aiming to grow their presence in the region. So it's just smart, market expansion. While the focus has also been primarily, on Germany and Canada over the last season or two, Wood mentioned that Brazil is also a potential market play for them due to its large football fan base. Let's not confuse American football with soccer football, because football is huge down in Brazil. The Lions are exploring sponsorship opportunities in Brazil, just like they are in Germany, which could further enhance their global reach. Now, obviously, Ford Motor Company has a heavy presence in Brazil, as Wood had mentioned yesterday. And, of course, Germany. They've been connected to, I got a typo there, auto industry for generations. So it makes perfect sense to expand and continue to grow the fan base and presence in both countries. Eric, what are your thoughts here on the market expansion?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. Never anything bad with it. It's just, are we eventually going to see how many divisions? There are 8 divisions. Are we going to see 8 more teams and back to a 5-team division again? And the other 8 teams are all in foreign countries?
So you're thinking of a total market expansion internationally, have an international division?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be fun if we had international AFC, international NFC, and maybe there's a team each? Or I don't think there could be 4 teams, but maybe you just put a couple of teams in each.
Yeah, because
maybe the Doo-Doo Browns will head out there.
Yeah, but with the way they talk about like the whole thing with the Lions trying to get the playoffs to be for, the seeding and all that. A lot of people that don't like that the Lions want it.
Oh, my bad, Eric. I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, buddy. Sorry, go ahead.
So they want, so the Lions had proposed a rule to have it be where, like, if the Vikings had 14 wins and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had 10 wins, but they won their division, that they would go to the Vikings for the playoff game. Well, this is one way where you could kind of get rid of divisions. And I know a lot of people want the tradition of the I don't know. Of
The divisions?
division.
Is that what you're talking about?
So it's kind of a hard thing to want to step away from tradition, but we're almost getting to the point where if you had international teams, where are you going to put them in a division? You can put them AFC or NFC, but then which division are you going to stick them in?
I think we're a long way from that, honestly. I mean, I think that the idea is nice. I think they're trying to grow it right now, obviously traveling with the teams that they have, but I don't know if they can actually put a team out in an international country and what that would mean. You know what I mean?
I actually think if it would be okay if it was Mexico or it was Canada or maybe even Brazil. That's not too far, and that's just going south. That's not traveling all the way across the ocean. You're not doing an 8 or 9 hour flight to get there.
So imagine their away games.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So an international team would be traveling 20 hours a week on a plane from that.
Yeah.
I think that would just be nuts. I think logistically it's a nightmare. I think it sounds fun, but I think logistically it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
All right, sponsorship renewal. Come on, are we really? I'm just going to talk about it. All right, significant topic of discussion with Rod Wood was the renewal of the sponsorship deal with Ford, which has been synonymous with the Lions for years, right? Wood emphasized the importance of this renewal, noting that it allows the team to maximize benefits from the naming rights, especially with the upcoming Final Four event in 2027. You better believe that we will be there. The new deal reflects contemporary market values. What he meant by that is before the Ford Motor Company, at least from what I understand on the surface end of this, they were not paying as much, right, as what other teams, how do I say, the stadiums were paying, right? So if U.S. Bank, they're the naming rights for Minnesota, I believe, U.S. Bank Stadium. I don't remember. So they weren't paying as much as, like, say, them. But he also mentioned, where these naming rights come in for a company and then they disappear, and then you have to change the name up and the naming rights. Well, Ford hasn't gone anywhere. They're not going anywhere, or at least yet. Who knows what happens in the next few years, but wouldn't expect it. So the new deal reflects a little bit more of more money coming in from the sponsorship, at least is what I took away from the conversation. But my question at the bottom here was this really a question of happening or not? Like, something tells me that Ford Motor Company will always hold the naming rights of Ford Field unless that day comes when the team is sold. I just, come on, like this wasn't going to change, was it? Come on.
No. Listen, Ford Field is always going to be Ford Field. That's just like Heinz Field will always be Heinz Field. I don't care that they changed it to something else. I have no clue what it is. It's always going to be Heinz Field.
Exactly.
So, renaming a stadium to me just makes zero sense whatsoever. Like the Mercedes-Benz Superdome and all this other stuff. It's just going to be the Superdome forever,
Yeah. So facility upgrades and player experience would discuss the ongoing renovations at the Lions training facility in Allen Park, which include a brand new locker room, expanded weight room. We were in the locker room last year, which it didn't look extravagant. I expected a lot more in that facility. I expected to see massage chairs and, whatever, more TVs, maybe some Xbox stations. I don't know. You think that you would see more, but it was just plain Jane to me. And that actually was probably the away game or the away team. Now, these upgrades are essential, obviously, for maintaining a competitive edge in the league and ensuring players' satisfaction. And I think, honestly, some players, they rely heavily on the facilities that you have. They love the facilities when they're good. They can't stand it when they're bad. The more you can give a player for health and wellness and everything else that they need, the better that player would become. So I think it's crucial for these teams to get it right. So the Lions are actively seeking player feedback on facility improvements. We've seen the internal reports come out every year, and I think Wood said, it's great to see what they say. We take to heart what they say, not exact quotes, but they also rely heavily on what their players are saying, not so much what the external stuff is saying. So my fan question of the day, which came in last night, is do the Lions have cryotherapy chambers and hyperbaric oxygen therapy at Allen Park? I have no idea. No clue. So I, expanded on this and said that both can offer benefits for recovery, but they target different aspects of the body, with cryotherapy focusing on reducing inflammation and pain, and HBOT, which is a hyperbaric oxygen therapy, promoting tissue healing and oxygenation. I feel this question came in because of all of the injuries, which Rod Wood also mentioned yesterday, that I think he was just trying to make a funny, which really didn't go over as a funny. We said making sure that the guys have enough calcium in their diets because of all the broken bones. I mean, you hope that these guys are getting their daily rations of vitamins and minerals and everything else. Matter of fact, why not create your own pill packs of, things that are allowed by the NFL and put these pill packs in the locker room that they can have every day? Here's your daily allotment for this. Better yet, go deeper with it. Get some guys in there, get some very specific training done where you're doing blood sampling and you try to figure out exactly what your body's missing and you add that back in. I don't think that that's illegal in the NFL, as long as it's not, an illegal substance. They can take whatever they want as long as it's not on the exempt list. So I think that they should go with that direction. But I really believe in this hyperbaric therapy. I reached out to a company a couple of weeks ago because I want to go do some oxygen therapy for myself. And so this is a great question. Player management, injury concerns. Eric, did you have anything to add to these?
No, just that the training facility there in Allen Park, they're basically redoing the locker room. They're redoing the weight room. They've done some stuff for the fans now again. So he's saying that there's going to be a few changes, and they were talking about opening up a third field, and they don't want to leave because a lot of the players have bought their homes very near the Allen Park facility. And it's an easy 2-3 block jog down to the training facility every day to go get your training in. So if you're, rehabbing or whatever, it's just a short little drive from your house. Well, if they move it, then all these players have to move their houses. And they said that they knew for years that it just wasn't the best facility in the world. So they're trying to make it the best facility in the world, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. Matter of fact, Maureen, I probably butchered it again. I'm terrible with that name. She says this: it's like any workplace environment, make it appealing, and the employees want to be there and are happy to be there, right? So we'll throw this back to one of my favorite movies as a kid. If they build it, they will come, right? You got to build it, and then they will come. So the Lions continually, obviously, adding to their to Allen Park, which obviously means that they're not looking to move, which was a topic of conversation last year or the year before, that they were looking at property and trying to expand. Maybe they can buy out some of the adjacent buildings next to them and get some people to move. I'm sure that would be an expensive acquisition, but it's probably a lot less expensive than uprooting and moving everything. So that's got to be an option, at least on the table, I would think. Yeah. Player management and injury concerns. So this is where Wood tried to make his funny but addressing player management, Wood acknowledged the challenges posed by injuries during the previous season with 17 players on injured reserve. The Lions managed to achieve a commendable 15-2 record. Wood expressed optimism about the upcoming season, emphasizing the importance of retaining key players and preparing for contract negotiations as they transition from cheaper rookie contracts to more substantial deals. The Lions are also exploring the use of, and this is good right here, the use of salary insurance policies. I'm baffled that they haven't been doing this, but you best believe they're going to take out a sizable insurance policy on Aiden Hutchinson. Assuming that there's an underwriter that's going to give it to him. You would have to. However, Wood did note that the rising cost of these policies are a consideration for the organization. NFL rule changes and future plans. I know Eric has a lot on this today. We're going to get into right after this. Wood shared his insights into the NFL's ongoing discussions about rule changes, including the overtime rules and kickoff regulations. The Lions support changes that enhance the game while ensuring player safety. Wood also mentioned that the possibility of the Lions playing an international game in the near future, particularly in Germany, given their growing fan base there, is likely. I didn't necessarily hear 2026, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to. I think that he was just having a discussion about the possibilities of it becoming, sooner rather than later an option for the Lions. Before I forget, I see some good questions in the chat. And do me a favor. If there are players that you want highlighted, just email me, mailbag@rockdown.com. I will look at it every day. And then if there's good stuff in there, I will be more than happy to fit it in if we can. So fill it up. The mailbag is on Wednesdays. So every Wednesday, I'm going to try to highlight the mailbag. I didn't do it today other than the one question that I had in the article. But fill it up. Give me as many questions as you can between, Wednesday and Tuesday, and then we'll talk about it on Wednesdays. So keep on going here. Now, this one got me a little excited. Ticket pricing and fan engagement. So the conversation also touched on the ticket pricing strategies, would explain that the Lions are adjusting ticket prices based on the market demand while maintaining a fair approach for the Lions fans, right? Despite some backlash regarding price increases, the team has seen a high renewal rate for season tickets. Well, of course, you've also seen a lot of people drop out, but indicating a strong fan support. Look, when you're invested and you have been your entire life, it's doubtful that you're just going to say, yep, can't do it. You're going to find a different way to be able to manage these ticket prices, meaning you're going to have to go off platform to sell tickets. You're going to have to go off platform, to be able to make some things happen, meaning you bring in, we've always had a club, right? So we got multiple people to go to games, and we do that for multiple reasons, but it also helps to lessen the blow. Right? You've got a really cool group of people that you go to games with every single week, or every other week. So you're also creating, this camaraderie in this group of just fun, exciting football fans. I'm going to give you my personal note here. Wood mentioned that he didn't get complaints about ticket prices. So my question is, really? Has he not paid attention to anything online? The ticket pricing on secondary market, in my opinion, has no business being used for average ticket prices. I would say that it makes more sense to look around the league and say, what are your standard ticket prices out of the gate after May 15th when tickets are available? What are you selling those tickets for? If you see that the average price is $280 a ticket for, section, lower bowl tickets, well, then, yeah, there's no reason why you can't raise your rates a little bit. But using the secondary market is insane to me. For reasons like this. Number one, did you know that the Lions set the fees on Ticketmaster? And according to Ticketmaster policies and the ticketing truths, both of which I attached in this article, commissions for fees on ticket sales largely belong to the venue, artist, and promoter. Well, who's the venue? Who's the artist and who's the promoter? Well, that's the Detroit Lions for home games. It's also the Detroit Lions and their away game opponent. So they're the ones that are getting the fees. They're the ones that are getting the lion's share, no pun intended, of the fees. Yep, the fan can go in and say, I paid $250 for this ticket. I want to sell it for $400. And next thing you know, you see a $300 fee. Well, that wasn't set by the fan. That was set by the organization. Ticketmaster, on average, receives less than 6% commission. And you can see all of that in the ticketing truths and the Ticketmaster policies available on Ticketmaster.com. I linked it in my article here because I just think it's BS. Look, I'm not trying to be negative against the Lions. They have every right to charge a fair and equitable amount for their tickets. They do. We have watched some recent success. These ticket prices help them to afford better coaching staffs, better changes, like they're doing to the locker room, obviously the practice facility. So all of these things, are part of the plan. I get it. But comparing it to a secondary market, I think is the wrong way to look at it. I really do, because those tickets wouldn't be going for that price. Number one, if you hadn't set those rates that high for fees. And number two, what are you exactly looking at? Are you looking at only the ticket price, or are you looking at ticket price with fees? I would like to know a little bit deeper. We'll never know. But I feel like they've gouged us too quickly. We've had a little bit of success in 50 years. Like, it should have been done a little bit more incrementally. And I hate to say it. I know this personally. There are some diehard Lions fans that have been going to these games for generations that are no longer season ticket holders. And what I saw last year at the Commanders game was a bunch of fair weather fans, a bunch of newbies. It's not the same. It's not the same environment. That's what's going to happen. And I'm not saying that a wealthy fan is different from a blue collar fan in any other way than if you haven't been invested in this team for generations, like many of us have been, or decades. Yeah, well, maybe you don't understand what it is to be inside Ford Field and, you know, the traditions that we hold and the things that we do in every game. Or then you start leaving at the end of the third quarter in droves. You just spent $1,000 on that ticket. Where are you going? That sends a message to your team. Our fans are giving up. We're going to give up too. Like it or hate it. That's just the psychology of it. You're sending a message to your team. Sit your ass in your seat. Enjoy the game. It doesn't matter if you leave now or later. You're still going to be stuck in traffic. So anyway, what are your thoughts here, Eric?
So before we started today, I had a little conversation with Will off air about this very subject. Something near and dear to my heart. And in the beginning, I loved Rod Wood. I thought he was great. I thought he was awesome. Brought us new uniforms and all these new upgrades and, you know, really cool things. But then this ticket thing, the last couple of years, he's a hypocrite. He says one thing and does the complete opposite. So the Detroit Lions now have the highest average ticket price. That's the price that's sold to season ticket holders in the entire NFL. No one pays more for tickets than Lions fans now. We don't have any Super Bowls. We don't have any NFC championships. Okay, now I'm going to tell you something. There's nothing wrong with having 20,000 people on a wait list. And I think the Lions just wanted to get through it as fast as they could because they've never had a wait list. The Green Bay Packers have a wait list of over 100,000 people. They tell people it's going to take you 20 years before you get tickets because somebody has to die for the next person to get tickets, right? They just started this year taking away season tickets from people that have sold every single ticket for at least 3 years. Not 1 year where they sold a few games, every single ticket for at least 3 years. So they have such a different standard over there in Green Bay. Their tickets are half the price of ours. And I know you're sitting on a bench, but it's still an NFL game. And I'm telling you right now, the Lions are not doing this right. There's nothing wrong with having a big wait list. There's nothing wrong. You just can't cave to the pressure of everyone wanting to get in. It's no reason to go up by 35% 1 year and then 50% the next year and then 80% the next year. This has to stop somewhere. And they asked him, are you going to, up ticket prices next year? Probably, but it's going to be negligible. It's probably not going to affect many people. Well, if it goes up at all, it is just horrible. These ticket prices should stay the same for the next 5 years. They should come out and say, we're locked into this. We're not going to increase prices for the next 5 years. So at least people know, because this going up every year, they're just going to chase everyone away. Even people that can afford it are going to start going the other way if it just keeps going up every single year. It can't go on like this. Because, maybe we should have kept the Silverdome around. Maybe we should have just invested into that building so that way we could fit 90 or 100,000 people at the games. They wanted to go into Detroit, into Ford Field, because it only held 65,000, because that way they could sell it out or sell most of the seats. They wouldn't have half the stadium empty like they were when they were in the Silverdome. Even when we were 1993 or 1991, when we had really good teams and we were winning the division and going to the playoffs and hosting playoff games, there was a lot of games during the season that I went to back then that weren't completely sold out. And I remember I still have my ticket stub somewhere of going to see them play the Dallas Cowboys. And my ticket was $17.50 plus fees. I think the fees were like $2 or $3. and it's just not the same anymore. And I wish it was. I wish that they'd go back to paper tickets instead of these electronic ones. At least a commemorative paper ticket, because
Which you can get inside the store now for $20, by the way.
yeah. Oh, can you?
Yeah,
I
I don't
didn't
know
see
if they're available for every game, but you can get commemorative tickets. They're encased in like that clear
Plastic,
plexi. Yeah, they're like a half
Yeah.
inch thick. They're
I have the ones from the playoff games like that, but
yeah, I forgot to buy them.
yeah. But like it just reminds me of, so Megan Stefanski's mom owns the Uperman's bar. Okay, her dad owned it before he died, and their last day was day before yesterday, the 30th, because they sold it. And Megan was taking down all the ticket stubs that they had tacked all the way around the bar, and there was just hundreds of old ticket stubs and the prices on them. I was floored. How
Well, I mean,
cheap
obviously we understand that the prices are going to change.
yeah,
I
they're
mean,
going
it has to. I mean, prices have to change. It's it's commensurate to.
but this is my thing. The Lions, when the Lions were a good team back in the 90s, they didn't double the prices, they didn't triple the prices. But now that we're good for 3 years in a row, we have to pay more to go see a Lions game than we would to have to go see them play for the Philadelphia Eagles or the Chiefs. The Chiefs just had 3 Super Bowls in a row where they went to. They won 2 out of 3 Super Bowls, and their tickets are cheaper than the Lions. That makes 0 sense to me.
Yep.
The league should almost step in and make ticket prices the same for every NFL stadium.
I would agree with that and disagree with that only because I think it's impossible to set standardized market pricing because every city has different tax, issues, right? There's different fees. There's, some stadiums are owned by the cities, some are not. I think that each one, I think there should be a base price, right? And then it kind of goes up based on your situation. But I agree that 2.5 seasons of winning,
Yeah.
2.5 of winning, great seasons. How does that justify a ticket going from 50 to 200 bucks, 50 to 175? It doesn't justify. Bring a Lombardi, and then I don't think anyone's going to care what we pay.
I won't complain if we have a Super Bowl. Even get to one, and I'm fine. Now, Rod Wood yesterday was bragging that the divisional round game was the most expensive NFL ticket in history other than a Super Bowl. And I looked the day of the Super Bowl, there were tickets cheaper to go see the Eagles and the Chiefs in New Orleans the day of the Super Bowl than there were for the Detroit Lions game at Ford Field against the Commanders in the divisional round. That makes 0 sense to me. You could have went cheaper to the Super Bowl than you could to the Lions game. That makes absolutely 0 sense.
Yeah, it's it's only going to hit, like I said, it's going to hit these blue collar workers, hardworking, Detroit Lions loyal fans that live in or near or around the city that have been committed to this team for generations that just can't afford it. I mean, when you look at, did they even stop and think for one moment, with everything that's been going on since COVID, people are still trying to dig out from all the money that they lost during that time, the inflation that obviously ensued after, I'm not political in any way, but the inflation, everything that has ensued after that. I mean, the pricing of gas, groceries, that's not going to change. It's continuing to go up. The market just tanked. So when you look around everything that's going on inside of America, it wouldn't make any sense to raise prices on anything. If anything, adjust it, but say, you know what, we're going to go on an escalator for the next 5 years. And we're going to go up 10% every year, year over year for the next 5 years. That to me makes more sense. And it makes more, and they could put an escalator in there and say, but look, if we win NFC championship game, we're going to go up 15% that year. If we win a Lombardi, we're going to go up 20% the next year.
There you
go. Lay it out, right? Lay it out and at least let the fans prepare for it, because what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of fans, in my opinion, drop out because they can't afford to maintain it. And then, it gives another opportunity to another fan to enjoy season tickets. But I would question what type of fan are we getting in there because I noticed a big difference last year. I really did. It was a huge difference.
Well, one thing they could do is they could say to all the season ticket holders, when they put the playoff tickets on sale for the season ticket holders, you get an email. When you get that email, it should say, we're going to sell you X amount. You were eligible to buy up to X amount of playoff tickets, but you are not allowed to resell any of these tickets. We want the season ticket holders there. These are non-transferable. These are non-sellable.
Right.
These cannot go back to Ticketmaster. They cannot go on StubHub. They can't go on any of the sites.
Yeah, and if you have a problem, you can't go to the game, then you have to find an alternative method. Here's a few things that I suggested, and maybe I'll write a letter to them outlining what my suggestions are. Not that they matter, but if you care, write a letter, send it in. But here's a couple ideas that we chatted about off, before the show. Number one, I feel like there should be an outlined definition of what you can and can't do with your season tickets. We know that if you sell your season tickets to make a profit, eventually your tickets are going to get stripped. But maybe it's a point system, right? Everyone has things that come up. You would love to go to every single game. Okay, what happens? Oh, shoot, I got sick. I missed a few weeks at work. I really can't afford to go to this game. I mean, let's just be honest here. More than 75% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So you can't afford to miss time at work sometimes. But if there's a reason that you can't go and you need to offload your tickets, well, that's okay. If it's a point system, you get 1 point for selling, your tickets to a game. They can figure out the semantics of it. If you have 2 tickets and you sell 2 tickets to one game, no biggie. It's just 1 point. Well, I can't go to this game either, or I got something else that came up, whatever, right? Whatever your excuse is, doesn't matter. Who cares? Well, now that you get point number 2, you're not in hot water. Well, let's say you get to point number 3. Now it's almost a quarter of the season. Now you start to get in a little bit of hot water. We're like, hey, one more pump, and you're getting ripped. So you get to that 4th point, you're screwed. And if you do this year after year, maybe the first year it's like, okay, look, you can't sell more than 2 tickets next year. But outline it. Outline what the cause and effect is here. Outline it so that maybe in year 2 you can only sell 2 tickets, and then you're back to square zero again. Make it a point system that maybe the next year you don't sell any tickets, and that erases all your points. And so you start fresh again in year 3. You don't have any points against you. I mean, it's just like an employment point system for tardiness, for, calling in or whatever. I think that you need to make it marketable and understandable in black and white, and not just have an all of a sudden you get your tickets ripped away. I mean, rules are rules, right? Rules are meant to be broken, but I think if you at least outline something, it keeps the fan understanding what they can and can't do. And yes, as a season ticket holder, here's the other thing that I put up. There should be a season ticket holder exchange, just like they said it was supposed to be, so that you can offer up your season tickets to just season ticket holders. And if they buy them first at face value, no points.
Yeah.
But if you put it on the secondary market and someone else, buys them, then it's a point. But if it's a season ticket holder, it's not a point. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a few rules here that would make a whole lot of sense, and it would be really easy to outline. It'd be really easy to track internally. In your account, there could be a section where it tracks it all for you. I don't think it should matter how many times the tickets are transferred to another individual, because if you do have a group of people, you are transferring tickets, right? Yep. You may not be selling them, but you're transferring them. So anyway, we'll digress off of this.
Well, one more last thing.
Sure.
So last year when the playoffs happened, every single Lions season ticket holder saw what these tickets were going for on the secondary market. So this ticket that I bought for $135, I can get $2,000. Holy crap. So they put their tickets up. They sell their 2 or their 4 tickets. Well, they just made enough to pay for the entire next season. I know someone that did this.
We know a few people that did it.
The only tickets they sold were to the divisional round, so they could pay for their season tickets for the following season, and then they were going to go to the NFC Championship game at Ford Field. That was the plan. It didn't happen that way, but that was the plan, and they ended up paying for their whole next season of tickets. Well, except for now they raised the price again, so now they had to come up with even more money. But that was the plan, was just to sell one game. You still get to go to a playoff game, and you paid for next year's season tickets for nothing.
So let's expand, my rules theory here for just a moment. Let's expand it to this, right? This is capitalism at its best, right? What the Lions are doing is capitalism, right? They're taking full advantage of pricing in the market, what they deemed fair and equitable. Well, why can't I enjoy a little bit of capitalism here? Why can't I sell my tickets at an extremely high price if I want to, and someone's willing to pay that? So it shouldn't matter how much you sell the tickets for. It should only matter how many times you sold a game. Because to your point exactly, if I can't go to the game, or I don't want to go to the game, or whatever the point is, if I could sell a ticket for $2,000 and I'm profiting, $1,500 a ticket, and yeah, that just paid for 3/4 of a seat for the next season, why wouldn't you do it? Hoping that the Lions are going to go to the next game. So it shouldn't matter how much you sell the tickets for, but I think that the Lions need to look at this from a different perspective too, that you keep raising prices, you're going to lose fans, and you're going to lose the dedicated fans that have been there for you. If you honestly don't care about that, then keep doing what you're doing, because you're going to continue to lose really solid. I mean, when I heard, even Megan said, I don't know if I'll be able to do it next year. I don't know if I haven't spoken to her in a while. I don't know if she's re-upped or what she's done, but because of these ticket prices, you've got people like Fan of the Year that is even second guessing.
Yeah. She doesn't know if she's going to be able to go to the home games.
That's insane. That's insane to me that she doesn't know if she can. Well, I'm talking about going to the away games. And it's like I told my dad, it's like, look, I'm going to spend more of my time, I think, trying to go to the away games. That's why we're doing the bus trips, which, by the way, if you guys are thinking of doing the bus trips, I will have updated pricing on the app today. Deposits are due, I think, May 1st. And that's to make sure that you get a secured spot, because I think May 15th is when the schedule comes out. As soon as that schedule comes out, I have to buy tickets within 24 hours if I want a shot at getting bulk pricing. If I don't get bulk pricing, then we're going to pay regular ticket pricing. And as you can see, ticket prices are huge with any Lions game, even at away games. So if you want in on the group of 50, right? We have 50 people going to these away games. Chicago, Green Bay, Minnesota, at a minimum is what we're planning this year. All inclusive, hotel, your ride, your taxes, your fees, your tolls, your parking, everything's included. Your food on the bus, you get really, really, really good box lunches, all your snacks, all your drinks. It's just BYOB. And then a full catered event the day of the event with various barbecue, right? We're doing different barbecue companies at different locations, all for a cause, right? It's not a big money maker for us. I want to get a group of 50 going to these away games. We need more presence at the away games. We travel really well, but this is something I want to do every year, and then I'm going to try to grow it into every team at some point. This is a way to go see every stadium. So I want to get us to go to every team stadium at some point, through the next 5 years, 7 years, however long it takes, depending on the schedule. So away games for the NFC North, and then I'm going to try to pick one away game. And maybe we fly to a game and we don't drive. Maybe we fly, but I'm putting together bulk pricing. When you look at the pricing of what you would spend to do these trips versus just going on your own, you might save $150, $200 going on your own. But look at it this way: you're not getting a full barbecue buffet. You're not getting the ease of having not to drive, right? You just get to kick back and enjoy yourself, and you get to be with 50 cool ass people. So, and you get to meet some new fans, right? Some new friends. You make some friends for life. It always happens. So check it out. It's on buymeacoffee.com/rockdown. I'll put all that up into, I'll just start posting it daily, I guess, on the,
There you go.
on the YouTube, but I need you guys to share it, get it out to all your friends and family that are Lions fans. I'll write an article on it and I'll just start dropping it every week if I have to, but get it out there, man. Start pumping it. This is a way to help out Rockdown Cancer Foundation. It's also a way to get you to the away games at a, relatively decent cost. You're talking $950 or $1,050 with hotel. We're talking 4-star hotels. I'm not going to stay in junk places. Yeah. If you want to stay at Motel 8 or Motel 6 or whatever they are, yeah, we could save a couple $100, but I'm good on that. I don't need to wake up with bed bugs. So I'm all set. I'm all set on that. All right. So let's, what do you have next? It's popping before we get into Dan Campbell. I can't believe it's already 9:45. So we got to get into Dan Campbell.
We talked about tickets for a bit.
Yeah.
So did you want to talk about the rule changes?
Yep. Go through it, please. Oh,
All right.
wait, real quick. Hold on. Warren King, welcome to the Lions Faithful, man. Appreciate you, buddy, for joining the Lions Faithful. Obviously, let me do this. Let me give you the Alex Anzalone answer.
Everyone wants to be a dog until you got to do some dog shit.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And then there was another super chat in there from Derek Lewis. He said he just wanted to be up on the marquee. Look, Derek, man, you're in here every day. Really appreciate you for showing up each and every day. Appreciate your $2 super chat. And thank you again for being part of the Rise and Grind Morning Show. Let's get you this one.
The Detroit Lions select Aiden Hutchison, defensive end, Michigan.
All right, let's do it. Rule changes. So obviously the Lions struck out yesterday, but it was interesting. Some things were tabled, and we'll talk about it. So Eric, take it away.
They did, but they didn't. So there were many new rule changes that were agreed upon this week at the annual league meetings. Let's take a look at each rule and how it affected the teams for the 2025 season. So the regular season overtime to allow both teams to have the ball now. Overtime in the regular season will partly mirror postseason overtime again. Both teams will now be able to get the ball in the extra period of play in regular season games, unless the defensive team scores on the opening possession. Unlike postseason overtime, though, overtime in the regular season will remain 10 minutes long. If the score is still tied at the end of the 10 minutes, the game will end in a tie. So do you think this will end up having more ties again?
Say that last part again. I'm sorry.
So if at the end of the 10 minutes, the game will end in a tie. So do you think this is going to make for more ties in the regular season again?
Yeah, this is regular season play, not playoff play, right? So
different. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like it.
I just wish they'd go back to the old kick the ball off. Whoever scores first, whether it's a touchdown, a field goal, no matter what it is, a safety, any score, sudden death. That's it. It's called sudden death.
I don't like that at all either. I think that every team, because the Lions have been screwed on that too many times.
I loved it.
And even if they don't get screwed on it, I think that you have to be fair, especially with competition and fairness. I think that every team is deserved of an opportunity to possess the ball. Where I think that where maybe it does make sense is if someone scored first, you get the ball and you can't score, then yeah, the game's over. But I don't like the sudden death aspect of it all, because weather can play a big factor in that, among other things. But I think that everyone deserves a chance to at least possess the ball once, at least.
I understand that, but I'm old school. I like the old.
You're old, that's for sure.
All right. So touchbacks moved to the 35-yard line to help further promote returns on kickoffs. The NFL is penalizing teams who kick the ball into the end zone or out of the end zone even further. If there's a touchback on a kickoff, the receiving team will get the ball at the 35-yard line instead of the 30. When the NFL implemented the dynamic kickoff rule last season, the receiving team got the ball at the 30 to start each possession. So what do you think about this one? I think it'll lead to more kicks landing in the kicking zone.
So to promote the kickoffs, the NFL is penalizing teams who kick the ball into the end zone or out of the end zone. How are they penalizing them, though?
Well, it's 5 more yards. So
Okay, so if it goes in the end zone or through the end zone, instead of getting it at the 30, they get it at the 35.
correct.
The dynamic kickoff is going to stay. They've adopted this rule forever, right? For now.
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
It's way more safer, less concussions, less injury.
Yeah, whatever. I don't think one season of dynamic kickoff is enough data, but especially for an organization that says, we've compiled 50 years of data and well, you just did it for 1 year and you're going to say that it's better?
Yeah.
Come on. Whatever. I'm good with it. I mean, it is what it is. Are you okay with the guys getting, you're the opponent getting the ball to 35? Well, Lions are going to have a great defense and they emphasize all three phases. So whatever. I'd rather not have them have a chance to return it.
Now, Jake Bates is just going to have to kick it a little shorter from now on.
I
All
say
right.
still kick it through the uprights because I'd rather not
Yeah.
have the chance of returning it,
All right, here we go. Replay assist is going to be allowed to assist the refs on objective aspects of a play. So the replay assist will have more influence on officials in 2025. The on-site replay official can help reverse penalties thrown for hits on defensive plays, such as face masks, tripping, and running or roughing the kicker. However, replay assist will not be allowed to retroactively hand out a penalty. So they're only going to be able to overturn penalties that are actually called. An example of how replay assist could be used in this instance came from a controversial unnecessary roughness penalty on the Kansas City Chiefs playoff win over the Houston Texans this past season. So what do you think about that one, Will?
Okay, so I'm trying to understand this because I didn't take any time to go and review, and I don't even know if they've printed. I'll have to look at the NFLPA and see if they've made the changes yet. But they're saying that, well, from what you've written, that penalties thrown for hits on defensive plays, which would mean late hits, like quote unquote targeting hits, helmet to helmet, face mask, tripping, in running or roughing the kicker. How about roughing the passer? Is that included? Defensive plays, hits on defensive plays would have to include roughing the passer.
Yeah.
Okay. So replay assist will not be allowed to retroactively hand out a penalty, which means if they find another penalty within the review, they can't say, hey, this happened too. It's an additional penalty.
Yeah.
So that's good, right? And then there's an example, I guess, with like what you're saying in the Kansas City Texans game. I agree. I think that this helps, but here's the only problem. Replay assist still has to come from New York.
Mm-hmm.
You're not giving the opportunity to the coach to say, that didn't happen. I want it reviewed. So this still leaves everything up to the wonderful Mr. Oz in New York.
Yeah. That's where the one thing I like the UFL, where they get not one, but they get two challenges of anything they want on anything, whether there was a flag thrown or not. The coaches can challenge up to 2 times if they get the first one right.
Quick shout out, Mike P says he's got a jet out. Appreciate you, Mike P. Mike, you don't have power down there? I mean, reach out if there's anything that we can do to help. You just let me know. I mean, I'm sure you got friends, family down there, but don't be afraid to reach out. Maybe there's something we could do to help. I don't know. I'm only 20 minutes from Kalamazoo, so. All right, what's up next?
There are more discussions allowed during the legal tampering period on a trial basis. They're going to try this out. Teams will now be able to have direct communications with free agents during the 52-hour legal tampering window. If a team reaches an agreement with a free agent on a deal during the legal tampering window, the team will be allowed to make travel arrangements for the player. The rule will be implemented for 1 season before determining whether it should become a permanent rule. Originally, teams were only allowed to contact agents during the legal tampering window, and they're also going to be, I think, allowed to have a short 5-minute Zoom meeting with the players as well.
So this is interesting because unless the player drops their agent, which if they have a signed contract, that's not possible without penalty. So they can get a deal done with the player, but the agent still has to sign off on it. So I guess what this does at least on the surface of it, is prohibits the agent from dictating the entire process. So that I agree with, because if there's a player that you want and the agent's not biting, I mean, let's just be honest here. You pick up the phone, you call said agent, and you say, hey, we would love to bring in X player. And, this is what we would like to do. We'd like to, have him do a physical and like to talk to him about, becoming a Detroit Lion, blah, blah, blah. Agent says, yeah, cool. I'll get with my player. We'll be back in touch. And agent hangs up the phone and never says word one to the player.
Yep.
Because he wants that player to go somewhere else. I'm sure that happens every day, right? So I would say that this helps to at least let the player understand that there's more interest in what the agent, this helps the transparency with the agent process. I think that that's what this is doing. I like it.
All right. And up next, K-balls will be able to be prepared prior to the game. Just like footballs used on plays from scrimmage, kicking balls will now be able to be prepared on the eve of the games. Several teams proposed this rule change, as teams were only allowed to prepare kicking balls on game days in the past. So that one, there's not much controversy to. And then now more scouting is allowed for postseason teams. Teams will now be able to get scouting credentials for potential postseason opponents in weeks 17 and 18 of the regular season. Additionally, teams hosting games in the wild card round will be required to hand out scouting credentials to all postseason teams in their respective conference.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, so just letting people get a little more of an eye on people. And then the NFL owners have tabled the proposal to ban the tush push. Imagine that. And the bylaws that have been approved by the competition committee. The competition committee approved 3 bylaws during the league meeting. In one of the changes, teams will now be able to designate 2 players to return from injured reserve when rosters are reduced to 53 players. Playoff teams will also be allowed to designate 2 more players to return from injured reserve in the postseason, bringing the number up to 10. Finally, point differential will be used as the third tiebreaker on waiver claims.
So this is the one really where the Lions only won something here.
Yes.
Wasn't this the Lions that promoted the 53-man rule, because last year they got screwed with John Kaminsky and Broderick Martin? They had to kind of decide what they were going to do. They ended up losing. I don't know if they actually lost anybody after 53, but they had to keep Kaminsky on the roster, and then they put Broderick to IR, and then a day later they put Kaminsky down to IR, which means they had a hole open on the roster, which Brad Holmes left that hole open, if not 1 or 2 holes, for a large part of, I don't know, first few weeks of the season at least. So I'm glad that they're making some changes here, and I'm glad that they're doing something with playoffs too, because this doesn't just impact the Lions, and we hope it doesn't happen again. It can impact any team at any time.
Yep. And then next up, the games can be flexed to Thursday nights on shorter notice. While the NFL announced several rule changes on Tuesday, there are other rule changes that have reportedly been agreed to. One of them will allow the league to flex Sunday night games onto Thursday night football on a 21-day notice instead of 28 days notice. NFL media reported teams can only play 2 Thursday night games per year, and there can only be 2 games flexed onto Thursday night football all season long. And then next up, the very last one, the alternate and throwback uniforms can be worn a total of 4 times. The NFL is allowing teams to wear an alternate or throwback uniform up to 4 times per season. Teams will also be allowed to wear their alternate pants in the playoffs. Previously, teams could only wear their alternate or throwback uniforms up to 3 times in a single season. So I kind of like this one. That's my favorite out of everything that they've done with the rule changes. And that's all the rule changes that went down at this year's league meeting. So the rule that the Lions had proposed to change the playoff seating was tabled until May. They want them to change it a little bit. And
so they're I can't believe that they're even really considering this
Yeah, I think with a few tweaks, they're actually going to have a vote on it.
I don't think that it's going to pass. So on the tush push thing, you heard Dan Campbell yesterday say that he was in favor of leaving the tush push alone because just like
Yes.
what the Lions do, if you find a way, to take advantage of a situation on the football field, well, that's what this game's all about. Like, you're trying to beat another team any way possible, and you find a method that works, and you're better than the other team because of it. Why change it? So Dan was in favor of keeping the tush push the way that it is. Some of these other things I think are just, antiquated rules that need a little bit of an adjustment. And that's why, you see some of these changes happening. There was one other change before we get into Dan Campbell here that is extremely important. And that is the change to how they're handling player guarantees. Eric, tee us up here on what happened here?
Yeah. I almost forgot about this one. So this was very quiet, and I did not hear about this anywhere until I was doing some digging last night. And the NFL last month made a small but potentially significant change to its funding rule, which requires teams to hold in escrow an amount of money sufficient to cover the fully guaranteed money in the future years of their player contracts. In the past, the date on which that money needed to be funded was always March 31st. This year, they changed it to April 8th, according to a March 7th league memo obtained by ESPN. The date is now permanently extended to 2 business days after the April television contract distributions. So when they get their TV money. And it happened to be April 8th, 2025 this year, allowing clubs to utilize these distributions as a funding source. This could have an impact on how some teams do business. So, for example, this year, the San Francisco 49ers included in their veteran contracts on April 1st a trigger for future guarantees. So wide receiver Brandon Ayuk's $27 million salary in 2026 and bonus money for this year became fully guaranteed on Tuesday. In the past, that money would not have been subject to the funding rule because it didn't become guaranteed until after the March 31st funding date. But thanks to the date change, it is now subject to funding, which means the 49ers likely have to put that money into escrow to cover future year guarantees earlier than they used to. So, going to make it so they have to have that money in the bank in escrow a little bit sooner.
Yeah, so this one's huge. Look, again, this is not stuff that every fan thinks about, deals with, cares about. But when you look at what these teams have to deal with, it all is relative. All of it is relative to free agency. It's relative to how they can spend money, when they can spend money, when they're expected to spend money. Let's just be honest here. Even though that these are multi-billion-dollar organizations, the individual owners of these teams that have to spend money out of their own pocket from revenues that the organization generates to pay everything that is not a player's salary, their overhead, right? They also have to manage now player salaries guarantees that are going to be coming due. So what happens with this now is each team has to designate an escrow account every year for the player guarantees and the bonuses, everything that these players are going to get paid. What the NFL has done is punted this a little bit further down the line. So when they get their revenue sharing, exactly what it says, when they get their revenue sharing from the TV deals, well, that money is now installed into their account that they can then plan to use for these players' contracts and salaries. You would think that, well, why would an NFL team have to worry about, $100 million? I mean, don't they make a bunch of money as it is? Yeah, they do. But these are real money problems for big corporations. Like, not everybody just has $100 million laying around. So, I mean, it speaks to them being a little bit more savvy with how they're structuring the deals, but also I think it puts an emphasis on free agency. You can't just go out and spend all this money in free agency when you have to turn around before the draft and make sure that you have all this money now installed into an escrow account. Has to be there. So there's so many moving pieces to this that I think a lot of fans don't recognize, appreciate, or understand why my team didn't spend a lot of money in free agency. This is part of it. And it's not that way for every team. You know, you have some owners that they don't care about money, right? They get tons of money. They don't care. You've got some owners that are more frugal. You got some owners that don't spend any money ever, right? They own a football franchise and they just don't ever spend any money. They're just trying to make money. Maybe their team doesn't make as much money as it should. So all of this stuff is relative to how it affects free agency too. My opinion, but I think it's warranted.
I just thought it was kind of neat seeing that last night. Was something that I didn't see anywhere else.
Yeah. Okay, so Dan Campbell.
Yeah.
Eric, do you have time today or what?
Yeah, let's go.
Are we good? Good on Dan Campbell?
Yeah.
All right, so Dan Campbell, let me pull this in first.
While he's talking, I might run out for a quick second.
Go for it.
All right.
So Dan Campbell, obviously, big interview yesterday. We're going to bring in the video here in just a moment. But essentially here what we got going on is he discussed a little bit of the offseason strategy and, of course, the team dynamics, shared some insights on the offseason strategy, the roster, assessment, gymnastics, if you will, the coaching continuity. A lot of wonderful things shared by Dan yesterday. Offseason assessment, roster management. So Dan Campbell began by expressing optimism about the team's direction, stating that he and the general manager, obviously Brad Holmes, have been actively assessing the roster like they do every year and planning for the future. He highlighted the importance of re-signing key players. He noted that many of them were drafted or signed as free agents for a reason. The Lions successfully retained several players and added new talent, including DJ Reed, Roy Lopez, Grant Stewart, who fit the team's culture and objectives. And Dan didn't mince words by, letting us know that these guys fit everything that the Lions are trying to do. And I get it. There's some people out there that just don't understand the importance of a Roy Lopez or a Grant Stewart. And I promise you, I do. I get it. I understand it. And if you actually do watch tape, you'll see it. Roy Lopez went up against Frank Ragnow last year. And I said this many weeks ago when not many, maybe it's 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago now, when we brought in Roy Lopez. The first thing I said when we highlighted it was the fact that in the game against Arizona, he was going up against Frank and he stood his ground. You're going up against one of the best centers in the league. And I hear other people saying, why are we getting this dude? Who is this guy? What a wasted, pickup. We need an edge. Why are we bringing in Roy Lopez? He just went up against Frank Ragnow in a rotation as a rotational piece, generally used on first and second down, and stood his own. And if you're going up against the best and the elite in the NFL as a rotational piece and you're able to do that, imagine what we're going to be able to do with this guy between an Aiden Hutchinson, a DJ Reader, an Aleem McNeil, and everybody else on this roster. He's going to be an amazing piece to this team moving forward. Grant Stewart, same thing. Dan mentioned this guy was kind of forgotten about. Not only is he phenomenal in special teams, but he can also play some defense too. So I'm excited to see both these guys. We draft, we build, we repeat, right? It's repetitive cycle in Detroit now. Quote, look, there's a reason why we draft the guys that we do. It's because they fit us. The hardest thing about free agency is not knowing guys. You don't have a history with them. You don't know how they are when they have an injury or how it pertains to practicing. What they're like after losses, what they're like after wins, what they're like when they do something wrong, and you get after them. All these things. But your guys that you pick and drafted for a reason, you're with them 3, 4, 5 years. That's huge. That's huge. So absolutely, we're going to sign those guys back. They are us. They are our guys. And so I think, if anything, it just helps you see the future. You have an idea of those guys that belong here long term. And it just means that it's not going to be as flashy outside of your own group. Let me break that down for just a quick second here. Back in the old days, we'll say the Michael Irvin days, right? The Dallas Cowboys days. After a win, where was Michael Irvin? He's out blowing you know what at every club everywhere throughout Dallas and having too much fun. And then that spills over into the week of practice. It spills over into potentially the next game. You never really heard of all the negative stories during that time frame, but they came out later. After a win in Detroit, these guys aren't out just clubbing it up. Nope. They got 24 hours to reflect and they get right back to work. And I'm not saying these guys don't go out during the week and don't have fun or, whatever it is that they do, but I've never heard of an instance of any trouble, really, other than J-Mo last year, but few and far between, right? I mean, isolated incident. So I think that what Dan is trying to say here, after a win, you know how these guys are going to be, meaning, are they going to get right back to work? Are they going to get a little bit too high on this win and go out and, maybe not put as much emphasis into the next week of practice? Or are they going to get right back after it and make sure that they maintain that standard? Same thing after a loss. Are you going to let that loss and maybe your crap performance in that game bother you all week? Or are you going to get right back at it, get into the coach's head and say, what did I do wrong? How do I fix it? There's a big difference here. And again, psychology plays a big role in this too. Who are you mentally? Because at this level, it's from the shoulder up. Forget the physical ability. Everyone has it. I know I'm like a broken record some days, but that's what Dan's speaking to. The mental side of this game is so important. So if you know your guys, you know who they are from week in and week out, day in, day out, month in, month out, off season, when no one's looking at you, what are you doing? Right? You off screwing around all the time? Are you focusing on making your body better? Right? You sharpening your skills. That's why it's draft, build, repeat in Detroit. That's why you see us retaining the guys that they feel are going to be important to this team year after year, which is often the guys that they drafted. And the importance of continuity, kind of the next section, I guess it's leading into is, the continuity with the coaching staff, but also the players is critical for the Lions' success. Campbell emphasized that the familiarity among coaches enhances the efficiency, right? So what he means by enhancing the efficiency is they think alike. They know what each other is going to do from a player perspective on the field, also the coaching perspective, in the rooms, and then also on the field during the games. You know what these guys are thinking. You know what the reaction is going to be. It's almost you can look at each other and you're like, yep, got it. You don't even have to say anything. You know what it is. That is huge. We saw it for the last 4 seasons. Yep, there was some issues at times, and there were some mistakes at times, but more often than not, I feel like these guys were in lockstep with each other. And Dan brought guys in that he knows. Morton is a big critical piece for this because he was part of this in 22. So it enhances and allows for smoother operations on the field. He expressed confidence in the new offensive coordinator, John Morton, who was part of the team's rebuild efforts in 2022. Campbell also believes that the transition will be seamless due to the existing relationships and understanding among the coaching staff. So, for me, there's another question asked, which is funny because just the other day I brought up, I'm like, I'm not worried about this offense. I'm not worried about Morton. Because this was Dan Campbell's offense, right? I kept saying that. And then you heard someone ask the question yesterday, well, Ben Johnson leaves and, are you worried, about the offense? And, this is a Dan Campbell's offense, more so than a Ben. And Dan, with the PC answer, says, no, it's a Detroit Lions offense. This is Amon-Ra St. Brown. This is Jared Goff. This is Penei Sewell. He kept listing off names, right? Said the same thing about the defense. Started listing off names. I thought it was a great answer. He deflected away from himself. He's putting the onus on the players. He's putting the responsibility on the coaches alike together, right? Great answer, but we know this is Dan Campbell offense, right? There's another thing that Dan said. I can't remember if it was yesterday. It might have been yesterday, where he was saying, this is my team to lead right now until it's the team's team, right? Until these guys take it over and I don't have to say anything anymore. Every year he starts that way is what I took from it. And then eventually it's Alex Anzalone's taking the defense and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jared Goff taking the offense. So he's going to lead this team. The coaches are going to lead this team until the team takes the team over. I love that. Absolutely love that. So with what I've said so far, Eric, any compliments or comments before I get into the total of success here?
All right. I was waiting there dumping my dumpster right now. It was really loud. I had myself muted. Yeah, just you have to have a defense that is unselfish and a team that's unselfish, not just the defense, actually. Uh, these guys, like you said, can't be out partying it up like they're from the Dallas Cowboys of the 90s. And I don't think they are, you know. Today's players are so much different than players 20 years ago or 30 years ago. 20-year-olds are so much different. Now it's let's go play Call of Duty or do a podcast. So I think they're doing more of that kind of stuff than they are out partying it up and, playing with guns and going to parties. At least I hope so. And if you've noticed, the Lions have had the least amount of arrests in the NFL over the last 10 years. And that says a lot to Brad and Dan that their players just aren't getting arrested. They're getting the right types of players in this team. They're not bringing in unsavory characters, let's put it that way, or someone that just they feel is a risk in that area. Someone that's been in trouble with the law before. They're just not bringing those players in because there was a couple of who was it, Carter from the Philadelphia Eagles that he didn't take in the first round. He passed on him, and the Philadelphia Eagles took him, and he's turned out to be a pretty good player. And I think that Brad still to this day would not go back and change his mind on who he picked, because he wants quality character guys here. And
it's not to say that Carter isn't quality character. He just had a lot going on.
Yeah, there was some, there was risk, and I think Brad would rather not take the risk. And you've seen him pass on some very good players, draft and free agency, because of the risk. And I think the Lions are really good at doing risk assessment.
I think they absolutely are too. And you heard, Brad Holmes say the risk quote the other day. It's now a t-shirt, by the way, on warriorthread.spreadshop.com. Check it out. So paying the toll of success, like this to me is what's happening right now. Not only are the fans paying the toll with season tickets, but you're paying the toll of success by losing coaches. And let me just hit the quote here. It says, the bottom line is when you come into an organization, you want to have the vision for it. You want to get it up on its feet, and then you want it to be self-sustaining. I feel like we're just about there. It's because of the people that we have in this building. It's the owner we have. It's the people that we have from scouting to player personnel to coaches. And most importantly, it's the players. We've been fortunate to stay together here long enough to build this thing with a true foundation of players. That group of players that have been here now going on 5 years with us, all of us together. So that's what it's about. That's what it's about. This group, all of us now. We've seen the ups and downs. We've been through it. So it is the next challenge. So if you say, well, you lost this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, that to me is a slap in the face of the guys in the locker room. We're looking forward to this. This will be the next challenge for us. It won't be easy, but we're all good with that. So a few things to take away here. One, I like the fact that, he says it's a slap in the face to saying you lost all these guys. True. What about the guys that we already have? What about the guys that have cut, that have stayed here? What about the guys that have came back? The Tim Patricks and everybody else, Levi Onwuzurikis, those guys came back, right? They didn't have to, but they did. Campbell saying that we're just about there. That's a big statement, because all I've heard from, again, a certain faction of the fan base is we're one player away. We need a $50 million edge rusher. Matter of fact, we need two of them. We're not one player away. Matter of fact, Dan doesn't even think that we're about there to sustaining success. But the only way that we can do that, the only way this team can do that, is to continue building in the same fashion that they started with. That little napkin that they wrote out their plan on in 2021, sometime in January, early January, I think is when the meeting was, in 21, is the same core principle process this team has followed. Just ask Chris Spielman. So when you pay the toll of success and you start to lose coaches like Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn and Tanner Engstrand, which again I never thought he was going to be the OC. I know many people did. I thought he would be next in line too, but he just wasn't there yet. I feel like this is an opportunity now to see where this team is at mentally, to see a big change. Now, I think that one thing's going to happen. You may not have 15 wins this year. Matter of fact, I can almost guarantee it. It's going to be a much tougher schedule. And there's going to be a little bit of bumps in the road. Hopefully early, just like it is every year. Like I say about Jared Goff, the first 2 or 3 games, they kind of figure it out. And by the end of the first quarter, if we're 2-2, that's a win. Because by the second and third quarter, we probably won't drop a game, depending on how things line up this year. Hopefully we get another thing that Rod Wood said yesterday, just to kind of pivot here, is hopefully we get a mid-year bye week. Because did you realize this, Eric? Because I didn't really realize it until he said it. They played 14 games in a row. I knew that it happened, but I didn't think about it like, holy cow. 14 games in a row. You wonder why some of these injuries happen. These guys were just worn the F out.
Well, you got to remember that was the week 5 bye was the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that any team should have buys that early. I think that there should be 2 buys, and I think that you could break it up. This will be in my letter to them too. I'm going to write a letter. I think that there should be 2 buys, and that should be proposed next year, hopefully. But you need to facilitate it in a way that, okay, the entire AFC is off a week and the entire NFC is off a week.
Perfect.
Do your interdivisional matchups this week, for this early bye, and then this. If you're playing on Thanksgiving, you better not have a 4-day break. It better be a week or 10 days. No one should ever have a 4-day break again. So what I'm going to do, I don't know if someone wants to help, but I'm going to break down last year's schedule and see how we can make it better. And I think that if we can do that and we can show the NFL that there's a way to make it better, maybe they'll listen. Maybe someone will listen anyway. I don't know. Just words. Leadership development. A significant theme in Dan Campbell's remarks yesterday was the development of leadership within the team. He noted that players like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff, Aiden Hutchinson are stepping up to take ownership of the team. That this shift allows Campbell to focus on the broader strategies rather than micromanaging every aspect of the team. It's kind of what I was saying earlier. This is Dan's team until the team takes it over. He believes that having these hungry players who are eager to improve is also essential for the team's growth. The roster additions and player fit. Dan Campbell discussed the recent additions to the roster. He focused on competitive nature of the players. He praised Reed for his cover skills and competitive spirit. He also noted that he does not shy away from any challenges. Also, Roy Lopez highlighted for his ability to handle tough situations on the field, contributing significantly to the team's defensive efforts. Jared Goff's growth. This is a big one. I really don't know how much more he can grow, but the fact that Dan thinks that he can continue to grow and Brad thinks that he's continuing to grow is crazy to me, but he's still growing. When asked about Jared Goff's development, Campbell expressed confidence in Goff's ability to grow further this season. He noted that Goff had been proactive in bringing new ideas to the offense, which indicates his increasing comfort and understanding of the system. Campbell anticipates that Goff will continue to evolve as a leader and playmaker, expecting Goff, this is my statement, expect Goff to have more freedom with the offense at the line of scrimmage in 2025. So yesterday, Dan was kind of highlighting, that last year, Jared Goff was saying, hey, I need to get to this play. I see this. I have this vision. I know this play is there. We have to get to it. And he kept bringing those things, to Ben and Dan throughout the season. And, I think that Goff's going to have more freedom. Kind of like I said earlier this year, he always has the ability to audible at the line of scrimmage. But how much more freedom are you going to give Jared Goff inside an offense where he kind of helped build, shape, and mold this offense too with Dan and Ben Johnson? So this is just as much Jared Goff's offense as it is anybody else's. The draft strategy and the future planning. As the Lions prepare for the draft, Dan Campbell acknowledged that their strategy will focus on finding players that fit their culture that can also contribute immediately. He mentioned that while they are not done making moves, which some people ran away with that, They're open to opportunities that may arise during or after the draft. The team is committed to building a strong foundation through careful selection and development of talent. Addressing the challenges, through injuries, Dan Campbell addressed that the importance of managing player health. Obviously, it's important. He expressed hope for the players like Levi Onwuzurike, who had a tremendous bounce-back season in 2024, that he continues his health, obviously through this season. The Marcus Davenport, who's recovering from a nasty, torn triceps muscle from week 3. And then Ali McNeil, also recovering from an ACL. I got a typo. That the week 15 Bills matchup in 2024. Dan emphasized the need for them to return to full strength, that Ali McNeil will have difficulty getting back before week 1 at the start of the 2025's kickoff. He acknowledged that the challenges of integrating new players while maintaining team chemistry, but he also remains optimistic about getting it done, obviously with the team's resilience. I don't think there's going to be an issue. I really don't. Any words from you on this while I adjust this real quick?
Just that I'm surprised that he didn't talk about Rodrigo at all, because he's basically in the same boat as Ali McNeil. Now, I know Ali McNeil's twice the size of a human as Rodrigo, but I think they're both in similar boats. I think they're both looking at mid to late October, maybe even November, to come back full bore to be able to play in games. They're probably both going to miss training camp. And unfortunately for Mr. Rodrigo, this is the final year of his contract. And Ali McNeil, he's under contract for, a few more years, so he's okay. But this might be a throwaway season for one or both of them, just due to injury, that they may not be able to come back. And if we're pumping along and we're doing just fine without them, why bring them back and risk injury if it's a 50-50, shot of whether they should play or not? If you're doing really well without them.
I don't know why this thing's not letting me update, but whatever. Kind of weird.
Yeah.
I just wanted to update that word, but
oh, okay.
It said out of. I've never seen this before, but it is what it is. So at the end of the day, look, it was a great interview. I was going to play it this morning, but that would take us to 11 o'clock. Maybe we'll play some of it tomorrow. I really just wanted to kind of highlight, a lot of what they were discussing. Is there anything else you wanted to add to Dan Campbell? I got one other section here. So let me get through this. And if there's anything else you want to add, go for it. I know you prepared some stuff too. The offensive line changes that are potentially coming. Man, did I find this enlightening. So Dan Campbell spoke to the offensive line, potentially seeing some changes in 25. Now, he stuck to the affirmation of Graham Glasgow's importance and fitment along this offensive line, which I agree with. I think the last year was, a bad year for him at times, but I think that there's more to Glasgow's game than there's not. And Campbell also praised that about Glasgow's experience playing in multiple positions. Glasgow may be moved around a little bit this season, including back to right guard, which is where I expected him to go. So the fact that he said that makes me feel a little bit better, again, about what we see and the work that we're doing here, that has to be a potential for him. If he had a bad year at left guard, why would you keep him there? Or was there something that was going on last year, ticky-tacky injuries that were holding him up a little bit? Was Taylor Decker to blame for, some of the issues? We don't know. I think the tape can tell you a few things, but we don't know the internal issue that there could have been going on there. But the fact that he mentioned Glasgow could go to right guard, okay, that's great. I think that there's a great fitment there. It's obviously, empty now because of Zeitler being gone. Perfect fit. Campbell also mentioned the importance of Glasgow being a backup center. And this is something else that I've highlighted about Glasgow's game, that, man, when he filled in for Ragnow the year before in 23, he didn't skip a beat. Like, Glasgow's a really good center. Really good center. And I think that there's a team out there that if Glasgow is maybe a little bit younger, someone would love to have him as a center, to be honest with you. But then he mentioned Giovanni Manu. And Giovanni Manu, hold on, just got a message. Okay. Giovanni Manu. So a couple weeks back on the Rise and Grind morning show, I spoke to the possibility that Giovanni Manu may get a shot at guard this season. Dan Campbell, another spelling error. Dan Campbell confirmed that the option is there and did not rule it out. Could you imagine that mammoth man at guard?
We were talking about it.
Holy cow. Huge if he gets a shot to play at guard and actually can play it well. It's a little bit less footwork, right? But imagine him coming in at least maybe some run game. But the thing that I would say is it's kind of hard not to sell what you're going to do. If you bring in, Manu and you're, doing inside zone all the time, well, teams are going to get hip to that. So then you set them up, right? You come in, you do inside zone to the right behind Manu. Maybe then you switch Manu to the left guard. You run inside zone to the left behind Manu. Well, then you bring him back in at right guard. They're going to think, oh, they're definitely doing inside zone. Play action, J-Mo, touchdown, right? That's how you set them up. And I think that there's a possibility that they could be doing some stuff like that. Who knows? Instead of just sticking with the same 5 all game long, you bring in an extra lineman, or you give a lineman a breath and you bring in Manu, or you Mahogany, switch it around a little bit. What's wrong with doing that? I don't see many teams do that at all, actually. I don't know why you wouldn't. If you've got these type of assets for offensive linemen, it doesn't hurt to give your offensive lineman a little bit of a breath. And at the same time, you're getting, I guess, a little bit more, how do I put it? You're keeping the defense on their toes, right? Keeping them guessing. Then he mentioned Christian Mahogany. Campbell spoke highly of Mahogany's first impressions, albeit small sample size. Dan confirmed that more work is yet to be done, and the opportunity for Mahogany to earn a starting job is possible. Another spelling error. But he has been confirmed. But that has not been confirmed. Excuse me. The team expects all these players to battle it out in camp, and may another spelling error, best man win. So yeah, look, Manu, Mahogany, Glasgow is going to be a dogfight. These guys are going to be going up against each other all summer long, and may the best man win. I think that's it. It'd be great to see Manu get an opportunity to get some snaps. We've seen the type of shape that he's in. So, Eric, take it away, man. What do you think about this?
So imagine this for a second. You have Giovanni Manu on the right side at guard. You have Mahogany on the left side at guard. And then you bring in Glasgow as a fullback. And you have, just listen. Then you have Laporta come from the tight end position, get behind center, take the direct snap.
Oh, man.
And you have Glasgow push up into that line. Now, listen, you want to talk about a tush push right there. And Dan Campbell said yesterday, he's all for the tush push. He says if there's something you can do really well, teams are just going to have to figure out how to stop it. There you go, right there. And it's not risking Goff anymore. Goff could be off to the side or whatever, because that's the way that I know the 49ers did it, and that's the way the Chiefs did it, was with their tight end. They didn't necessarily have the quarterback do it because they didn't want to risk injury to the quarterback, because that's how Patrick Mahomes got hurt, was on a quarterback sneak on a tush push type play. So he didn't want to do it anymore. So then they're having their tight end do it instead. Big body, 6'5", 6'4", perfect. There you go. You got your big jumbo package in. Do the tush push. Maybe Dan's got something like that up his sleeve. I'd love to see it. So anything with Manu, I want to see it. I want to see this kid succeed in the NFL.
Let me clarify what Dan said about the tush push, though. He said that if you can figure out a way to beat it, great. It's all about competition, being better than your opponent. Dan did say that they don't do the tush push simply because of Jared Goff. They do the quarterback sneak, and they've done it at a high level. They've completed a lot of them, but they're not going to put Jared Goff in that position. I think that would be stupid. But to
That's
your
why I
point,
say-
yeah, I could see Manu, back there, or even put Manu at right tackle, and you put Penei Sewell back there at halfback. I mean, there's some crazy things that could be done. I'm sure that they have some crazy plays up their sleeve, but I don't want to see that a whole lot.
Have Sewell get the ball and have somebody push him.
Yeah.
You're not stopping 1,000 pounds of O-line. Come on.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Unless they have Desmond Watson on the other side, then maybe they could stop it.
Desmond Watson, man, what a mammoth man he is.
I know the Lions aren't going to draft him, but it's going to be fun to see if he gets drafted somewhere, just because the stories have come out about him, and it makes it neat that somebody on maybe day 3, when I'm at the draft, I can sit and watch for his name to get called.
Yeah. All right. So lastly, to wrap this up, Lee McNeil, we've spoken about it a little bit. I expected that he wasn't going to be able to start the season. Dan Campbell confirmed that. And so today I'm going to dig in, which I've already done the research, and it's almost done, actually. I want to compare the injuries and the timeline to what other players were able to do, when they were able to come back. What did their first season back look like? Defensive tackle is a little bit different than wide receiver or corner. Wide receivers and corners are cutting. They're doing things that are a little bit harsher on the knee. But tackles have to anchor on that knee. And you're talking a 300-pound man anchoring on a knee versus a 185-pound corner or 185-pound wide receiver. Big difference. And the receivers and corners, they're moving fast, right? They're making quick cuts. They're not jamming on their legs, like these tackles are. Offense or defense, it's a much different rehab process. And then have to rebuild all that strength, the muscle that they've been building for a decade, right, to those legs. Same thing for Aiden. It takes time. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do this year. And I hope it's not so much as a throwaway season as it is just take a little bit of time for him to get back. And that's why I'm not so out on the fact that the Lions won't take a defensive tackle early. They're going to have to replace Reeder anyway. And if they have a nose tackle like Roy Lopez already on the roster, which if you think about the evolution of the roster, if Roy Lopez sticks around for next year, maybe DJ Reeder's not around because he's going to be too expensive. So they're going to have to figure out, is that Broderick Martin? Is he going to take a leap this year? Is he going to be the nose tackle next year? Or what are the Lions going to do? So it'll be interesting to see which direction they go, but we'll be here for it. Final 30, man.
Yeah. Hey, we're getting close. The draft is just around the corner. Lots of cool stuff came out the last couple days. So we'll take the rest of the week. We'll unpack everything that was said. Hopefully tomorrow we'll get to watch some of that video, because I haven't even sat down and watched it yet. Haven't had time. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the rest of the week and the oncoming season. Can't wait, man.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. And I mean, I would more than happy play it, but I'll keep us online till way after 11. And
yeah,
it's already been a long enough day. So if there's any poppin' news, of course, we'll be back. Otherwise, I think I got so much to dig into. We'll see you guys back here in the morning. Take care. Go and probably go Detroit Lions. Have a good day.